The NBA's rich history is full of some mesmerizing performances from players recognized as heroes, villains, and even unsung heroes. Believe it or not, one of the more overlooked performances actually came from a Lakers legend, whose legacy simply dwells under the shadow of his more celebrated peers. I'm talking about the 6'9" small forward, James Worthy. Before Kobe Bryant came along, this guy had always been my favorite player. He was the perfect running mate for Magic Johnson in the Showtime offense, and for a variety of reasons. For one, he had incredible speed, and was most frequently the recipient of Magic Johnson's no-look passes at the end of the fast break. In half-court sets, he would display his quickness, as he would frequently blow by his defender as they were unable to keep up with his lightning-quick first step. Worthy was also known as a clutch performer since his early days in the NBA. In the early 1980s, the Lakers' longtime commentator, Chick Hearn, gave Worthy the perfect nickname to summarize his greatness. He called him Big Game James. Time and time again, he showed up for Los Angeles when it mattered the most. But there's no greater example of that than in the 1988 NBA Finals against the Detroit Pistons. The Bad Boy Pistons were the team on the rise, on the verge of starting a dynasty with their extremely talented group. After the Lakers barely survived Game 6, both teams knew they were in for a dogfight for Game 7. In order for the Lakers to come out on top and secure their 5th championship of the decade, they were going to need some stars to shine bright. But unfortunately, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was completely neutralized in this contest, as he not only had his worst game of that postseason, but maybe the worst game of his entire year, as he shot just 2 of 7 from the field and finished with 4 points and 3 rebounds in 29 minutes. He even had more turnovers than field goals made. The Lakers needed someone to step up, and to say that Worthy did that would be a massive understatement. In this do-or-die contest, he played in 44 out of the 48 minutes, and had a triple-double for the ages, as he finished with 36 points, 16 rebounds, 10 assists, and 2 steals, while making 15 of his 22 shot attempts. Also consider the fact that he did this while being guarded by Dennis Rodman, who was one of the greatest defensive players in the history of the league. The Lakers would go on to win the game and the championship, with a final score of 108-105. And if James Worthy doesn't have the game of his life, then basketball history looks very different today, as the villainous Pistons would have won their first of 3 straight championships. I've been saying it for years, but if there's one guy who doesn't have a statue outside of Lakers Stadium, but deserves one, then it's certainly this man, the one fondly remembered as Big Game James.
Bro, when you got the ball and they booing you, you know what that means. Get that ball to that man. So he was just trying to score. I remember Julius like, bro, I'm just trying to get on the board. Like, I'm just trying to score. Like, I ain't trying to have 0.
Yeah.
So everybody was just trying to get 2. Like, just get 2. He gonna get all the other ones. So that's what it was. I mean, it was really us running around trying to get him the ball because they were trapping him. He was shooting tough 2s.
Yeah, he was.
He was shooting tough 2s, like 1 foot inside the 3-point line 2s, like pull-ups. And I'm just like, dang. And you just see his face, he looked young, bro. Like, he just looked like he had it.
5-6 minutes left in the game. I said, KB, you got 5-6 more minutes left in that body? And man, you talking about the dude that was tired? He was like, yeah. And you know him, his will, his mental capacity to understand that the moment this is it, it was something I'll never forget.
Like, I'm a big Kobe fan as well, so I don't want to like put that last game down or for you, but we learned right before game time that the game didn't matter, because the game would have mattered for us making the playoffs, but we learned right before that the game didn't matter. Somebody else had won. Mm-hmm. But I will say we were up pretty handily most of the game. He probably airballed like 6 or 7 times. I mean, he shot 50 shots.
Yeah.
I don't think he was that good throughout most of the game. Now, the last 3 minutes, he was special. The last 3 minutes was unreal. It was vintage Kobe, right?
Yeah.
He ended up winning the game for him. I mean, there were people on his team that were passing up wide open shots. Like, if they got the ball, where's Kobe? Where's Kobe? Let me get Kobe the ball. How can I screen for Kobe? I mean, the illegal screens that were set, the refs had to be on it too, because the illegal screens that were set were wild.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was, how can I get Kobe a shot?
He destroyed a franchise. His narcissism and selfishness destroyed a franchise. The Lakers are a laughingstock and just had the most embarrassing season we've pretty much ever seen an NBA team have. And Jack Nicholson and everybody's sitting at courtside celebrating this. Standing ovation. And then we're heaping on more fraudulence to the night. Magic Johnson calling him the greatest Laker. No, he's not. Oh, Kobe's the great. That game last night was hot garbage.
So somehow, despite the fact that Kobe is my favorite player, and despite the fact that I've made more videos about him than anyone else, I've somehow never made a video about this epic game that concluded his legendary career. Now, as you all saw in the intro, the thoughts on Kobe's finale are somewhat divided. People either praise it as if it's the greatest thing they've ever seen, or they act like it was a complete and utter farce. As for me, I recognize that it isn't the greatest 60-point performance of all time, but with that being said, I did think that it was one of the greatest performances I've ever seen, but not for the same reason that the critics claim. First, let me explain a little bit of the context. Heading into that matchup with the Utah Jazz, the Lakers had a 16-65 record, meaning they were guaranteed to finish the season with the worst record in franchise history, regardless if they won or lost. On an individual level, Kobe was also having a rough year to say the least, as he was averaging just 16.9 points per game on a career low 35.4% from the field. That was also the worst field goal percentage in the entire league that season. As someone who watched many games after Kobe's Achilles tear, it was clear that his body betrayed him, and in his 20th season in the NBA, he just didn't have that much lift on his jumper like he used to. On the other side of the court, there was the 9th-seeded Utah Jazz, who found out just shortly before tip-off that they had officially been eliminated from the playoffs since the Houston Rockets won their game earlier that day. So from that perspective, the Jazz had nothing really to play for. Now on the night, Kobe scored 60 points on 22 of 50 shooting. Since the NBA merger in 1976, this is the most field goals attempted in an NBA game. He was also 6 of 21 from three-point range and 10 of 12 from the free throw line. Now people like to act as if this was a terribly inefficient game from the Mamba. And sure, 60 points on 50 shots does sound a little bit alarming when you first hear it. But when you look into it, it's really not all that bad. For example, that's 44% from the field as a perimeter guard on a high volume of shots. The league average field goal percentage for shooting guards in 2016 was 42.7%. So not only was Kobe well above average that night, but everybody and their mother knew he was going to shoot the ball just about every time he got it. So honestly, that percentage becomes even more impressive. Even the league average true shooting percentage was 54.1%, and Kobe's was 54.3% that night. By almost every metric, Kobe had solid scoring efficiency on his farewell night. Something else you need to remember is that this was always going to be the Kobe show. It was nationally televised. All of the celebrities showed up. And Kobe knew that this would be the lasting impression on his NBA career. Even he admitted that he was nervous heading into that contest, as any of us would be. So when the game started, unsurprisingly, Kobe played like he was nervous. He started the game missing his first 5 shots, and at that point, basically everyone thought that he was going to have a very sad farewell. But that's not what happened. After that point, Kobe went 22 of 45 from the field, which is 48.8%. So yeah, at the end of the day, I think you're someone who's really lacking context if you try to take a dump on Kobe's 60 points because he took 50 shots. But honestly, the 60 points were never the most impressive part to me anyway. What meant way more to me was the way the game ended. The Lakers were down by 10 points with 3 minutes left in the game. And from that point on, Kobe didn't miss a single shot, neither from the field or from the free throw line. Most of them were very tough shots, and if Kobe missed any one of those, then his Lakers probably end up losing the game. We had seen Kobe close out games with clutch baskets so many times before, And for him to do that one more time and lead the Lakers back from a double-digit deficit was just pure perfection. To me, that was more special than the fact that he got 60. Kobe led his team to one final victory in a way that only the Black Mamba could. You can call him selfish, narcissistic, or whatever other dumb claim you want to come up with. But at the end of the day, Los Angeles is a city that sees Kobe as a hero. What he did is what everyone wanted to see that night. He did it with above average efficiency, and ultimately they won the game, led by a guy who has 5 championship rings. So really, what's the problem?
Has Paul ever been first team All-NBA?
Did Bob Cousy ever shoot over 40% from the field in his
we
career?
understand that.
Did
You're
he
right.
overshoot? Did he ever shoot over 40%?
Probably 39, 40%. Different kind
Not
of game.
once.
It's
Not
fair.
once.
That's fair. You also had 29 assists in an NBA game.
Oh, well, he was being guarded by plumbers and firemen.
People with less talent will always try to make a name for themselves by criticizing other people and hopefully getting some attention and perhaps increasing their credibility. So when you respond to something like this, you play into their hands. I won't do that, but I will defend the firemen and the plumbers that he referenced, and I'll just give you a few of their names of these firemen that I played with and against during those years. How about Bill Russell, the aforementioned, not too bad a player. Wilt Chamberlain, remember that guy? He wasn't bad. I recall. I guess he must have fought fires as well, but in any event, Wilt Chamberlain, still the best, in my judgment, small forward that ever played the game. A guy named Elgin Baylor. A couple of point guards that weren't too shabby. My colleague who also had an award created, a guy named Oscar Robertson, who was pound for pound the best player perhaps in the game. Jerry West wasn't too shabby. The guys on our team, Sam and Casey Jones, a guy named Hondo Havlicek wasn't too bad. Tom Heinsohn, Frank Ramsey, George Mikan, Bob Pettit. How I could go on and on. And we must have had the best firemen and plumbers on the planet at the time.
In the year of our Lord 2026, it is a very common thing to hear about players from the past being referred to as, quote, plumbers. In case you've been living under a rock, this is a derogatory term. It's a way to criticize and disregard former players, which is a tactic often implemented when trying to compare players from various generations. Now, when people first started saying this, it actually meant something. For example, in the very early years of the NBA, the league was simply not popular enough to financially support many of its players. Without a ton of attention on the sport, they simply couldn't generate enough revenue for all of their players to be full-time athletes. So naturally, many of the quote pro players also had to have second jobs to adequately support their families.
But every professional athlete, not every, but most professional athletes had a summer job. They didn't train year round like we did. They literally were plumbers and firemen and welders and farmers.
Yes. Oh, I don't know.
So it was a matter of fact.
A lot of NBA players worked a second job.
A lot of people did, and a lot of great players, Chris. Baseball players had winter jobs. They weren't making $1 gazillion dollars. They had, and you only got paid during the season. So a lot of these guys had jobs. I remember Richie Hebner was a grave digger, Chris. I don't know if you remember him. He's a first baseman, played for the Pirates, the Mets. Him. Richie Hebner. He dug graves in the offseason.
Wow.
That's why the term plumbers is a criticism when referring to former players. It's not because people hate plumbers and every plumber is a talentless person, but it's because players back in the day had their attention divided. The thought process is essentially, how could they be some of the greatest athletes in the history of the sport if they couldn't even fully commit their time to their craft? Now, I will say, referring to players from the 90s and 80s as plumbers will always be nonsensical, because at that point, NBA players were full-time pro athletes, seeing how the league had reached astronomical heights of popularity. But if you go back far enough, the critique might not be as outlandish as it sounds. Players having jobs outside of the NBA was very normal throughout the 1950s, the 1960s, and the early 1970s. Even some of the greatest players in NBA history had some very regular jobs outside of basketball. Six-time All-Star and former scoring champion George Yardley had his own business as an engineer. One of the greatest big men in NBA history and a five-time champion in George Mikan worked as a travel agent. The Hall of Fame small forward Jack Twyman worked in insurance. Bob Cousy would run his own summer camps in the off-season. The four-time All-Star Dick Garmacher worked in real estate, and Bob Pettit, who was a two-time MVP winner and is arguably the greatest player in Hawks history, worked as a banker. The list goes on, but you'll be surprised to find out one very specific detail. Despite all of these regular jobs, the titles of quote plumbers is almost completely inaccurate. For some reason, there was basically no overlap between the professions of plumbing and pro basketball. And yet for some reason, these former greats have been called plumbers more so than any other trade. If anything, it would be more accurate to generally describe them as bankers and insurance agents. There is one exception though. Just one. In all of NBA history, there has only been one pro player who was simultaneously a plumber. His name is LeBron James. Just kidding. His name is actually Norman Stanley Glick, also known as Normie Glick. This 6'7" forward had a very efficient NBA career, as he shot 100% from the field over the course of his playing days. Or rather, his playing day. He played just one game with the Lakers in 1949, took one shot, made it, and finished the night with a stat line of 2 points, 0 assists, and 1 personal foul. That was the only pro basketball game that he would ever play, as Lakers management seemed to believe that he didn't have what it took to play in the league. Interestingly enough, the Lakers did go on to win the championship that year, meaning that if this happened in today's league, he would have been awarded with a championship ring for his modest efforts. As tragic as it is, not only do people think that plumbers couldn't cut it in today's game, but apparently they couldn't cut it in the early years of the NBA either. Regardless, the legacy of this plumber lives on for decades afterwards, as people incorrectly apply his reputation and skill set to other players from his era and eras afterwards. The NBA in the early 2000s was a much different place. The league hadn't quite reached the levels of global popularity that we see today, so the NBA had to depend more heavily on their American audience to generate the revenue. Now, this professional sport had been in a great place for quite a while, in terms of popularity and intrigue. They had the Showtime Lakers in the 1980s, Michael Jordan in the 1990s, and Shaq and Kobe at the start of the new millennium. Basically, for several decades straight, the NBA Finals were almost always represented by a team or superstar that was flashy, exciting, and dynamic. Shaq and Kobe won 3 straight championships between 2000 and 2002, but that all came to an end when Tim Duncan and the San Antonio Spurs eliminated them in the second round of the Western Conference playoffs. You would think that many NBA fans would be excited about this development. After all, Tim Duncan was on a quest to win his second NBA championship, which would presumably stir up interesting conversations about his standing among the all-time greats. Well, unfortunately, that's not exactly how the masses responded. You see, as good as the Spurs were, they didn't have much in the flair department. Unlike the Lakers, they didn't have high-flying dunkers, they didn't have massive egos, and they didn't have the glitz and glam of Los Angeles. They were simply a well-rounded basketball team that was defensively minded and that was led by a player not known for his stunning athleticism, but for his basic fundamentals. All of this is just a nice way of describing how the team was viewed during that decade. To put it in a single word, they were boring. That was the predominant narrative at the time, and it was consistently regurgitated by analysts and fans, to the point that you'd be seen as crazy to think otherwise. So when the San Antonio Spurs eventually made it to the NBA Finals, hardly anyone tuned in. Given the perception of the favored team, this was a surprise to absolutely no one. Interest wasn't just low, but it was historically low. Since they began tracking the TV ratings in 1976, the 2003 NBA Finals had the worst TV ratings of any final series in league history. To put this in perspective, the 2003 Finals had less than half of the viewers that the star-studded 2001 Finals had. Meaning in just 2 seasons, the NBA lost more than half of its audience. I'm not gonna lie, I was one of them. I was a sad teenage Laker fan who had no interest in watching a Spurs and Nets playoff battle. Now, to be fair, I had no idea at the time that it would eventually become my job to cover the NBA. But still, even as a diehard basketball fan, I didn't see it as worth it to tune into this series when it initially started. And I think I speak for a lot of fans at that point. Well, I obviously regret that decision, because Tim Duncan was an absolute beast who was in the process of completing one of the greatest individual seasons in NBA history. Many people talk about his incredible play in the championship-clinching 6th game, as they should, but few bring up the dominant way he started that series. Despite having the worst TV ratings of any finals game in history, Tim Duncan played Game 1 as if he was sending a message to the entire world, as he put up 32 points, 20 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals, and 7 blocked shots, on 65% shooting from the field. His Spurs won the game with a final score of 101-89. To put this jaw-dropping performance in perspective, consider this. The game score stat is an advanced analytic that summarizes a player's level of productivity in a single game. Up to that point in time, Tim Duncan's Game 1 performance had the highest game score of any player in finals history. That's right, arguably the greatest all-around performance in finals history came in the game where the fewest people tuned in. As most of you know, Duncan would be fantastic throughout the rest of the series as well. But the cherry on top would be his Game 6 masterpiece, where he poured in 21 points, 20 rebounds, 10 assists, and 8 blocked shots, nearly achieving the first official quadruple-double not just in finals history, but in playoff history. Talk about a way to clinch your second championship. To state the blatantly obvious, Tim Duncan was named the Finals MVP for the second time in his career, as he averaged 24 points, 17 rebounds, 5 assists, a steal, and over 5 blocks per game, on roughly 50% shooting from the field. Those sort of numbers would be considered an all-time great single-game performance, but to average that over a 6-game championship series is hard to even fathom. At the end of the day, this is the crown jewel of Tim Duncan's legendary career. But at the same time, in a sad yet poetic kind of way, it is fitting that the greatest moment of Tim Duncan's humble career came at the time where the fewest amount of people were there to observe it.
The Ray Allen. Ray decides to go to the Heat.
Right.
Part of you might be upset that he left, but did it have more to do with where he left and went to?
Absolutely. It was absolutely where he went. You got to understand, we've been battling on LeBron for the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
They're our rival.
Yeah.
Like not, the Heat aren't our rival, it's LeBron. He's our rival. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like, dude, we just played them in the playoffs a year ago. Like, you can't go play with them.
So you don't want him to go help him get a championship?
Yeah, nah, that ain't how this works. Nah, I would have been better off him going to the Lakers. And that's our biggest rival.
Damn!
I would have been cooler with him doing that.
If Ray Allen say, you know what, hey man, look here, I'm leaving, you know, blah blah blah. I'm going to join Kobe. You cool with that?
If we had that conversation and it was like a conversation, I think the biggest issue, Shannon, was we didn't have no conversation with him. And for you to abruptly leave without a conversation, like, hey, I'm thinking about, you know, doing this.
Right.
We built something here. Like, that's the issue I had.
Right.
And me and him had that conversation. I was like, damn, we couldn't even get a phone call or nothing. Like, is it something we could have done?
Rumor had it that Ray was looking for homes.
While during the Miami series the year before, while we was down there, he was already looking at houses.
I mean, Miami is nice, B.
Like, you can't be in the middle of the series. You already checked out.
No, I ain't checked out, but mama want to live in Miami.
Nah.
The weather is nice. I don't want to live in Boston year round.
You already in this series like this some bullshit. I'm coming to play for them next year, who we're battling.
When Kevin Durant joined the Golden State Warriors in the summer of 2016, it didn't just shake the basketball world, but it sent a shockwave throughout the entire sports universe. Never before had we seen a 70-win team at an MVP candidate the following season. The Warriors were a team that was already involved in the discussions of the greatest team in NBA history, just for them to then add the best player from their strongest rival within the conference. At the time, and even all these years later, many people still think this is the weakest move in NBA history. It was the epitome of the term taking the easy road. As they say, if you can't beat them, join them. But in the highly debated world of basketball super competitors, that line of logic was seen as unacceptable. But what if I told you that Kevin Durant wasn't the first to make such a decision? What if I told you that the role player edition of this was arguably even worse? Well, obviously, everyone who is familiar with NBA history knows about Ray Allen's move from the Boston Celtics to the Miami Heat in the summer of 2012. Now, it wasn't like Allen didn't have his reasons for leaving. During the 2011 to 2012 regular season, Allen's name had been circulating in trade rumors, which did upset the former All-Star shooting guard. Beyond that, his relationship with the Celtics All-Star point guard Rajon Rondo continued to deteriorate, which goes back to the summer of 2011 when allegedly Ray Allen was enthusiastic about the Celtics potentially trading for Chris Paul, which would have involved a package centered around Rajon Rondo, and this obviously made Rondo bitter towards Allen. So at the end of the day, considering all the rumors and beefing, maybe Allen departing from Boston was understandable. But what many people don't realize is just how betrayed his fans and former teammates felt by this departure because of who he was joining and the way he was doing it. Ray Allen wasn't just leaving the Boston Celtics that he once won a championship with, but he was joining their bitter rivals, the Miami Heat. And this was right after Miami had just defeated them in 7 games in the 2012 Eastern Conference Finals. This aspect was very similar to the move Kevin Durant made from Oklahoma City to Golden State. But in a sense, this move by Allen was even worse, because unlike KD, Allen was joining a team that had eliminated him from the playoffs in 2 consecutive seasons, not just one. More specifically, he was joining LeBron James in the prime of his career, and that was the aspect that truly cut deep. Leading up to Allen joining the Heat, the Celtics had battled with LeBron in the playoffs for 3 straight seasons, and in 4 out of the last 5 seasons. Imagine Scottie Pippen leaving Michael Jordan and the Bulls to join the bad boy Detroit Pistons after the Pistons just eliminated them in consecutive seasons. That's kind of what it was like. What else was brutal to swallow for Boston fans was the fact that Allen's move to Miami wasn't even the best decision for him contractually. The Celtics had offered him a 2-year, $12 million contract, while the Heat were offering him a 2-year, $6 million deal, which he obviously went on to accept. Ray Allen's feelings about the Celtics organization and some of his teammates had soured to such an extent that he was willing to sacrifice half of his potential salary to play in Miami instead. These were the final 2 seasons of his NBA career, which is a situation where many players would look to capitalize on their value and get every dollar they could out of what's left of their career. But not Ray Allen. He joined his conference rival after they had been beating him like a drum. And what ensued must have been incredibly hard to watch for KG, Paul Pierce, and Boston fans. Now with Allen in the lineup, the Miami Heat won 27 straight games during the 2012 to 2013 regular season, which is still the second longest winning streak in NBA history. They also went on to win their 2nd straight championship and are now widely considered today as one of the greatest teams of all time. The scorned Celtics, on the other hand, were a first-round exit in the 2013 playoffs, which ultimately was a painful end to their once glorious roster. In the years since, the only thing the basketball community seems to remember about Allen's time in Miami is the incredible shot he hit in Game 6 of the 2013 NBA Finals, which is arguably the most clutch shot in the history of the league. But what frequently gets swept under the rug was the controversial path he took to get to that moment. Yes, LeBron James made his decision to join Miami, and Kevin Durant entered his next chapter by joining Golden State, which are generally two of the most scrutinized free agency moves in NBA history. But when we broaden our perspective from simply MVP candidates and include role players, then there's arguably no one who made a more ugly and brutal departure than Ray Allen.
The owners and players met for the first time in 13 days, and Jordan was at the bargaining table. So far, the first 2 months of the season have been wiped out, but after 10 and a half hours of negotiating, NBA Commissioner David Stern said it is likely there won't be an NBA season.
If you ask me, one of the most fascinating periods of time in NBA history was between the end of the 1998 season and the start of the 1999 season. In that crucial window, the NBA we knew was completely changing. The game's greatest player was retiring once again, meaning the dynastic Chicago Bulls, who had won 6 out of the last 8 championships, were now in the process of plummeting to the bottom of the Eastern Conference. Beyond that, a new wave of talent was trying to find its footing, while the old guard was making its exit. Analysts questioned how NBA fans would respond to such drastic changes in the professional climate. But by far, the biggest contributing factor to the uncertainty of the NBA's future was the impending NBA lockout. As we've seen several times throughout NBA history, the players and the owners couldn't come to an agreement on how the league should split its revenue. But this time, it was different. This time, things wouldn't be resolved for quite a while, as the dissension lasted through the summer, through the fall, and deep into the winter. Many question whether or not NBA games would even be played that season. On December 4th, the commissioner of the NBA, David Stern, stated that the cancellation of the entire NBA season was now imminent. At a certain point, the stalled negotiations meant that the All-Star game had to be scrapped, and things were looking bleak for the latter half of the typical NBA season. But finally, on January 20th, 1999, the two parties came to terms, as both the players and the owners were unwilling to go an entire year missing paychecks. The NBA would have a 1999 season after all, but the consequences of a 204-day lockout would be severe. With the NBA regular season beginning 4 months later than its usual starting point, several things had to be skipped entirely, like training camp and preseason games. Players and coaches had concerns about health, seeing how there was basically no time to get in shape for the season. But still, to most players, this was preferable over the alternative of going an entire year without making any money. With a longer off-season and with no training, a lot of players were starting the NBA season much heavier than the year before. Players like Shaquille O'Neal, Charles Barkley, Shawn Kemp, Patrick Ewing, Oliver Miller, Dennis Scott, and Bryant Reeves were just some of the examples of players being extremely overweight when the games commenced. To make matters even worse, the NBA had to organize the most hectic and condensed schedule that the league had ever seen. When the schedule dropped, it was jarring, and unlike anything the NBA players had ever experienced. Each NBA team would be starting their season on February 5th, and they would be playing 50 games in just 90 days leading up to the NBA playoffs. In the modern NBA, it's very common for veteran players to rest on the second day of back-to-backs. But that wouldn't be much of an option this year, as teams would frequently be playing on 3 straight nights. The Houston Rockets had a core of Akeem Olajuwon, Charles Barkley, and Scottie Pippen, who were all between the ages of 33 and 36. And within the first couple of weeks of a new season starting, the Rockets had a stretch where they had to play 5 games in just 6 days. The Seattle Supersonics had an even worse, as they were the oldest team in the entire league, and had multiple stretches where they had to play 5 games in just 6 days. In an interview, the former All-Star guard, Terry Porter, summed up that season by saying, "You know how guys say that the season is a marathon? Well, that year, it was a sprint. It was a full-out sprint." The insane workload was taking its physical toll on the players. Patrick Ewing, who came into that season overweight, ruptured his Achilles in early March. Along with that, Charles Barkley ruptured a tendon in his left knee. It wasn't just the injuries though, but the general fatigue was showing up in the numbers as well. Teams were averaging 91.6 points per game, which was down 4 points from the previous season and is still the lowest scoring season since the NBA merger. The average player was shooting only 43.7% from the field, which is the lowest it has ever been since the mid-1960s. Not to be redundant, but the pace of play was also the slowest in NBA history, which is certainly an aspect of fatigue as well. By the time the postseason began, basically everyone was gassed, which contributed to even fewer points per game per team, and an average field goal percentage of 42.5. Many people have concluded that the 8th-seeded New York Knicks were able to make it to the NBA Finals because of this chaotic, lockout-shortened season. And honestly, they're probably right. Up till that point, the NBA had never done anything like this, and they probably never will again. Now this might be the craziest part about all of it. Despite the schedule of 50 games in 90 days, despite the lack of proper pacing, and despite the lack of a training camp, a total of 83 players still played in all 50 games that season. In our current era of load managing, resting players, and injury mitigation, I can only imagine how players would respond to an absurdly brutal schedule like this. Part of me thinks they'd rather cancel the season and accept all those missed paychecks rather than taking on the brutality of that all-out sprint. Let me know what you guys think about that in the comment section below. One of the most frustrating things with discussions involving modern basketball fans is their overly simplistic obsession with quote efficiency. It seems like everything nowadays boils down to percentages. According to modern fans, Kobe Bryant was an inefficient player. Guys like Allen Iverson and Isaiah Thomas are overrated because some of their best seasons were when they were shooting just above 40%. And a guy like Larry Bird shouldn't be considered as one of the greatest three-point shooters ever, since many modern players shoot a higher three-point percentage. Every single day, percentages are blurted out constantly on social media, while they have no idea on how to properly contextualize these percentages. There's usually no consideration of the era, the rules of the time, the volume of attempts, and how defenses were played. All that matters in the simpleton's mind is how this number is higher than this number. Now with all of this in mind, this leads us to the topic of today's video, which is the most impressive aspect of Michael Jordan. Yes, most people recognize MJ as the greatest player of all time, but usually it's for a variety of predictable reasons. He was freakishly athletic, he was fundamentally sound, he won 10 scoring titles, he was arguably just as good defensively as he was offensively. He set all kinds of statistical records, won all kinds of awards, and of course, he was 6 out of 6 in the NBA Finals. Again, those are usually the main reasons why people see MJ as the GOAT. But I would argue that none of those things are actually the most impressive aspect of Michael Jordan's legacy. What if I told you that Michael Jordan was the most efficient scorer in the history of the league? Would that sound crazy to you? Well, if it does, I think it's once again because you haven't properly contextualized the percentages. Young fans like to say that LeBron James is more efficient, and I wholeheartedly disagree with that. Many other young fans commonly refer to Kevin Durant as the greatest scorer in NBA history, essentially because of how efficient he is in combination with his volume of points. Again, I don't see it that way, because it simply doesn't compare to MJ's resume as an efficient scorer. People seriously fail to grasp just how insanely unique MJ was as a perimeter bucket getter. For example, young fans will point out that LeBron has the higher field goal percentage than Michael, by a relatively slim margin. But what they don't tell you is that this is in no way a fair comparison, because Michael Jordan was a two guard, while LeBron has played the vast majority of his career as a small forward, and even a couple seasons as a power forward, which naturally means more of his shot attempts came closer to the basket. Generally speaking, people never consider positions when talking about shooting efficiency. Look at the average field goal percentage of each position during this NBA season. The average center is hitting his shots nearly 10% more often than the average guard. The forwards also have anywhere between a 2 to 3% advantage over the guards as well. By the way, Kobe Bryant's career field goal percentage was higher than this, while attempting a league leader's worth of field goal attempts per game. And yet, people have the audacity to call him inefficient. It really goes to show you how people lack a solid understanding of shooting percentages. Now, these averages have basically been the norm throughout NBA history. Now, to put these numbers in a practical comparison, let's use two greats from the same era as an example, Michael Jordan and Hakeem Olajuwon. Hakeem shot 51.2% from the field for his career, which is higher than MJ's 49.7%. So some people will automatically come to the conclusion that Hakeem was the more efficient player. But I would never say such a thing, since MJ shot 6 more shot attempts per game and was well over the league average efficiency of his position, while Hakeem was a little bit below it. Generally speaking, it is analytically proven that as players take more shots, their percentages trend downwards, and the reasons for that should be obvious to anyone who gives it a few seconds of thought. If you're taking more shots, then you're being less selective with your shots, meaning more attempts while contested, more attempts while double-teamed, and more attempts with the clock running down. And yet, despite the fact that MJ has the second highest career average of attempts per game in NBA history, he still shot roughly 50% from the field as a guard. That's not just excellent, that's not just astounding, but it's downright stunning. Here's another way to look at it. In the history of the NBA, only 25 times has a shooting guard averaged at least 30 points per game over the course of a season. 8 of those times were Michael Jordan, which makes him roughly 1/3 of NBA history at his position. In those seasons, MJ shot a remarkable 51.6% while averaging 32.9 points per game. In the 17 other seasons from some of the greatest two guards in NBA history, they combined for 46.4% on 31.6 points per game. Simply put, when it comes to perimeter scoring and efficiency, MJ is in a class completely on his own. Now obviously, this same logic and percentages should apply to the efficiency comparison between MJ and LeBron, especially considering how MJ shot 3.5 more shot attempts per game. When you look at the positions they played and the standards set for those positions, there's no question who is the more efficient scorer when you properly contextualize it. This is not all to say that LeBron and KD are not incredibly efficient players worthy of praise for excelling in that aspect, because they certainly are. But in terms of volume and efficiency, MJ separated himself from the rest of the competition at his position, likely more so than any other player who's ever played this game.
Yeah, he didn't have any lift. He didn't have any burst, and he didn't have any lift. We haven't really seen this from LeBron.
How about the fact that even JJ Redick announced a couple days ago that LeBron James is done? Yeah. But there's a reason they went from second best record in the sport to under 500.
You know, I think since we've gotten Bron back, we haven't been as organized offensively. Too many random possessions. So
LeBron James is now going through the motions on a basketball court, and the Lakers deserve better. Laker fans deserve better.
Something rather interesting is developing in the NBA right before our very eyes. LeBron James is now in the twilight of his career as his playing days are coming to a close. And the truth is, the LeBron James that we're witnessing today is nothing like the LeBron that we had seen for 20 plus years in the past. He doesn't demand the same level of attention from the audience. He doesn't have the same kind of respect and reverence from his peers. Much of that aura is now gone. LeBron is averaging his fewest points per game since his rookie season. Laker fans were not voting for him as much as they were in the past, as he was not named a starter for the NBA's All-Star game, but rather his teammate, Luka Doncic, got more than twice as many votes that LeBron got. Some people don't even think he deserved to be an All-Star, as he snuck in with a reserve selection, which seemed to be more of a legacy move. To put it simply, as things currently stand, LeBron's career is not ending as graciously as his fans would have hoped. But this got me thinking about some of the other greatest players in NBA history, more specifically, some of the top 10 greatest players of all time, and I started drawing comparisons to how their careers ended. And the reality is, almost no one goes out on top. Michael Jordan had the perfect ending in Chicago, but he couldn't help but scratch that itch, and had to come back and play professional basketball once again. Now, I am someone who has always been a big advocate for Michael Jordan's time with the Wizards, as I believe he was still an elite basketball player. But the truth is, although we do have to consider his injuries that he went through at that time, he still didn't make it to the playoffs in either of those 2 seasons. So essentially, he ruined the perfect ending that he had in Chicago. Now, when we look at Kobe Bryant, yes, he did score 60 points in his final game with the Los Angeles Lakers. But that was just a snippet of the twilight of Kobe's career, because those final 3 years after the Achilles tear were the roughest years of his entire career. They were riddled with injuries and filled with losing, as he shot well under 40% from the field in those final 3 years. And in his final season specifically, he shot 35% from the field while playing with the Lakers' worst team in franchise history at 17-65. Hakeem Olajuwon, who was legendary for his success with the Houston Rockets, ended his career averaging 7 points as a Toronto Raptor. Magic Johnson retired for the second and final time after getting bounced in the first round. Larry Bird retired in 1992 due to his poor health, after he missed nearly half of the regular season games and missed 3 of the 7 games in the playoff series where they had been eliminated. Shaquille O'Neal's career ended with a torn Achilles, as he was averaging just 9 points with the Boston Celtics. Tim Duncan's career ended with a second-round exit, while he was averaging only 6 points and 4 rebounds over that playoff series. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar ended his playing days getting swept out of the NBA Finals while shooting 43% in that series. Wilt Chamberlain's career ended by getting gentlemen swept out of the finals by their rivals, the New York Knicks. As you can tell, from the top 10 greatest players in NBA history, pretty much no one goes out on top. Almost everyone has a sour departure from the league. As the title of the video suggests, the perfect ending doesn't exist. Except for one. Long ago, in the 1968 offseason, the game's ultimate winner, Bill Russell, was sitting on his 10 championship rings. Nowadays, people look back at his success and assume that his dominance always came easy. But to put it simply, that's revisionist history. The truth is, Bill Russell was heading into his final season in the NBA as an underdog. The team they had just beat in the 1968 NBA Finals just got way better, as they added Wilt Chamberlain in the offseason to their already stacked roster. With the Lakers' new three-headed monster of Jerry West, Elgin Baylor, and Wilt Chamberlain, they were commonly being described as a super team, arguably the first super team in NBA history. The 68-69 regular season went as expected, as the Lakers had the best record in their conference, while the aging Celtics failed to win 50 games for the first time that decade. Despite the overwhelming obstacles, the Celtics exceeded the expectations, as they eliminated the 55-win 76ers in the first round, and then eliminated the 54-win New York Knicks in the second round, as they earned yet another trip to the NBA Finals. To the surprise of no one, waiting for them was the well-documented super team, the Los Angeles Lakers. Not only would Russell have to lead his Celtics on the court physically against the overwhelming odds, but considering how he was also their active head coach, he would have to lead them mentally and strategically as well. After falling into an 0-2 hole, Russell would lead Boston back into the series, where they eventually forced a Game 7 in Los Angeles. In that deciding game, Russell rose to the occasion, like he had done so many times before, as he helped shut down the Lakers' offense in the pivotal moments. They won Game 7 with a final score of 108-106, as Russell would sail off into the sunset, winning his 11th championship ring, finishing with a perfect 10-0 record in deciding Game 7s. It was literally the perfect ending to a legendary career, and even Russell himself was overwhelmed with emotion during the celebration. So yes, assuming the trend continues, LeBron will have a lot of great company with his career ending on a sour note, as that is basically the norm for a top 10 NBA player of all time. The truth is, the perfect ending doesn't exist. Unless, of course, your name is Bill Russell.
Foundationally, Pop, in his heart, wants to be a great defensive team. We recruited Bruce at the time that Kobe Bryant was kicking our ass.
He carried himself with a swag that just exuded confidence.
For three, yes. Bryant guarded by Ginobili out front. Kobe pulls up, fakes the jumper, now takes one over Manu, and that one is good for Kobe Bryant.
I know that part of the reason why the Bruce Bowen is part of the San Antonio Spurs is for Kobe.
That was the target matchup as we walked into Bruce, was how do we guard Kobe?
So I have a confession to make. I make a lot of these videos where I claim that a guy is the most underrated player of all time, or the greatest wing defender of all time, or various different titles like that. And then I often change my mind a month or maybe 6 months later, because as you learn more about the game, your perspective changes. And the title I'm giving this player of the most underrated defender of all time is certainly a title that has a lot of guys competing for it. With that being said, this is the guy who I think deserves that title the most for now. I'm talking about the former San Antonio Spurs small forward, Bruce Bowen. Now I think there's a few reasons why he doesn't get more love. For one, he wasn't an all-star player, so he obviously didn't demand much attention. On top of that, this league romanticizes the offensive end of the court, so if you're a one-way defensive player, you tend to get overshadowed. The second reason is he was probably the dirtiest player of his era, arguably the dirtiest player of all time. Trust me, guys like Kobe Bryant and Vince Carter know all about this, as he would step on their foot, place his foot underneath them when they were landing, which he specifically did to Carter so many times that Vinsanity nearly lost his sanity altogether. And the third reason is because Tim Duncan, his own teammate, was a more high-profile player. And when we look at the San Antonio Spurs in hindsight, people are always talking about the fact that Tim Duncan was robbed of a Defensive Player of the Year award, since he had 15 All-Defense Team selections but never once won the award. So if all of the attention is on Duncan's overlooked defense, then there really isn't any left for Bruce Bowen. With that being said, this wing defender was a massive part of the Spurs dynasty, and in some ways that people don't even realize. All the time, people talk about how defenses were gearing up to stop Shaquille O'Neal in the early 2000s. But as you guys saw in the intro of this video, that wasn't the case for the San Antonio Spurs, as they had plenty of bigs to compete with Shaq. They recruited specifically Bruce Bowen to stop Kobe Bryant, and for good reason. They acquired Bowen in the summer of 2001, and in the playoffs just prior to that, Kobe had averaged 33 points, 7 rebounds, and 7 assists on 51% shooting from the field, where the Lakers went on to sweep the Spurs. Now with Bowen in the lineup, the San Antonio Spurs had the tools necessary to make things more complicated for Kobe Bryant, which played a major part in why they were able to beat the Los Angeles Lakers in the second round in 2003, which was the end of the Lakers' dynastic run. Something else that people usually forget or just never knew in the first place is that Bruce Bowen was the Defensive Player of the Year runner-up for 3 straight seasons from 2005 to 2007, and each and every one of those years he finished ahead of Tim Duncan. Yes, I do believe that the big fundamental was not appreciated enough for his defensive impact during the Spurs dynasty days. But with that being said, there was a significant stretch of time where Duncan wasn't even viewed as the best defender on his own team, and that's because of the existence of Bruce Bowen. By the way, during those 3 straight runner-up finishes for the DPOY award, 2 of those were very close losses to the all-time great defender, Ben Wallace, who is a big man who is tied for the most DPOYs in NBA history. I believe the crowning moment of Bruce Bowen's defensive legacy should be the 2007 NBA Finals against the Cleveland Cavaliers, where he completely shut down a young LeBron James who was on an absolute tear leading up to that series. In that 4-game sweep of the NBA Finals, LeBron averaged only 22 points per game on a dreadful 35.7% from the field. Now, people really like to downplay this defensive performance from Bruce Bowen, as if it was easy for the Spurs to shut down LeBron since they could focus their entire defense on him, seeing that LeBron didn't have any superstar support. But if that was the case, then why couldn't the Pistons do the same thing just 1 round earlier in the Eastern Conference Finals? The Pistons were known for their elite defense and even had one of the best wing defenders of that era in the 6'9" Tayshaun Prince. With his length, size, and tenacity, Prince should have been the perfect candidate to contain LeBron. But in those Eastern Conference Finals, LBJ averaged 25.7 points on 45% shooting, including one of the greatest playoff performances of all time, where he scored his Cleveland Cavaliers' final 25 points of Game 5. I think it's fair to say that we just don't give Bruce Bowen enough credit for the ways he contained LeBron in the 2007 NBA Finals. Then you look at the totality of his resume, and Bruce Bowen is an 8-time All-Defender. That's second all-time in most All-Defense team selections by a small forward. The only small forward in NBA history with more All-Defense team selections is Scottie Pippen. And you guys already know the ways Pippen is revered for his all-time great perimeter D. There may be some good excuses for why Bowen is overlooked, like the ways people don't look too kindly on his slimy, dirty antics. But for a guy to be a part of a dynasty, and to be the runner-up for 3 straight seasons for the DPOY award, to now never be mentioned in the conversation of the greatest defensive players of all time, is quite shocking to me, to say the least. That certainly warrants him getting some serious consideration for the title of the most underrated defender in the history of the league.
What do you think about the attention that LeBron's received the last couple of years and the scrutiny and people picking apart his game?
I think you should sit back and enjoy him.
Yeah?
Because I think he's one of the greatest to ever play our game. If you're a basketball fan, you got to sit back and go, wow, how did he do that? Or I always say, boy, I wish I had his speed.
Yeah.
You know, but some of the stuff that kid does out there, he's by far, you know, Kobe was always my favorite since I got out.
I don't like that, by the way.
But LeBron James is by far our best player in this league. I don't think there's really anyone next to him. I think he's there, then you go down the list.
You know, I like the game that's played now. I mean, I respect the players. You know, we had our run, and this is their time, and this is how they like to play their game, and it's like they like to be coached this way. I like to watch the game now. I like to see how it's played. A lot of people complain, but there's too many threes. I can remember a number of years ago, I was worried about the small guards. You know, when you see Magic Johnson come in at 6'9", and the taller guards, 6'6", 6'7", coming in, I was wondering where the 6'3" guys, the 6'2" guys, where their place in our game was going to be. Well, all of a sudden the three-point line opened up, and now where's the big man going to be? You know, everybody's going smaller. You know, the one thing that I see happens often is you see these old broken down NBA players talking about their era and how great they were back then, and the players today are not as good as they were back then. That's crazy, man. I mean, obviously you haven't seen LeBron James the last 17, 18 years. You didn't see Klay Thompson score 37 points in one quarter, or you didn't see Klay Thompson, like I did, score 60 points in 32 minutes. Or obviously you don't see James Harden come down the lane getting ready to dunk on whoever's standing there. I mean, it's just amazing how these guys are playing the game today, and I couldn't be more prouder of them. The game's in a good place, and what I tell all these young players coming in today is keep the game the way you found it, and it can go on for generations to come.
You know, we just have to recognize that evolution is just a part of life, man. Like, you trying to tell me Giannis wouldn't be able to play an NBA game in the 70s?
Handshake, he wouldn't be able to do it.
Giannis,
neither would you. Neither would you.
Giannis Antetokounmpo would have 250 points in a game in the 70s.
quote, I didn't watch it back in the day, so I can't speak on it. They say it was tougher back then than it is now, but I don't think anybody had skill back then. Michael Jordan was the only one that really had skill, you know what I mean? So that's why when they saw Kobe, they were like, oh my God. But now everybody has skill.
There's plenty of people that have shot more, made more, and guess what? Made more at a higher percentage than Larry Bird from three. I'm not saying Larry Bird is not one of the greatest shooters ever. He's not one of the greatest three-point shooters ever.
Today's video is going to be a little bit of a short one, and it's also kind of a weird one. It's not typically something I talk about on this channel, but I thought it's something that needed to be said. If you ask me, Larry Bird is one of the select few greatest players in NBA history. But I don't just think he's a talented basketball player, but I also think he's a victim and a symbol of what's wrong with the basketball community today. As you guys saw in the intro of this video, there isn't a single old school player who pays more respect to this current generation of NBA players than Larry Joe Bird. Despite his ridiculous talent, and despite the fact that he was one of the best trash talkers of his era, it's pretty easy to see that he's also extremely humble and hasn't carried that ego beyond his NBA career. Yet for some reason, NBA fans, YouTubers, and basketball players continue to go after this guy as if he somehow offended them. A couple years ago, back when the whole "we're done with the 90s" trend was going around, a lot of young fans were justifying those shots at old school players due to the fact that a lot of former players are always saying nasty things about these current day athletes. And to a certain extent, they are right about that. Especially guys like Charles Barkley and Shaquille O'Neal, those guys are frequently taking aim at a lot of today's stars, calling them soft, calling their competition weak, and finding a whole bunch of other ways to diminish their talent and accomplishments. But the one guy who has never, ever done that is Larry Bird. To me, this is all the proof you need that all of the shots taken at former greats of NBA history was never about getting revenge for the way modern players are treated. Because if that was the case, why are you taking aim at Larry Bird? A guy who has done nothing but build up this current generation of NBA players and continues to go to bat for them every time they put a mic in front of his face. If y'all were honest about this, and that was actually the way you felt about these things, then this would be the one guy who was always off limits. But unfortunately, that isn't our reality. The truth is, whether you were a good player, an average player, a star player, or an NBA legend, in today's day, modern fans and players are taking aim at your legacy. But the harsh truth of the situation is that these legends are only with us for so long. In the past few days, I have been making a lot of videos about a lot of players that are no longer with us. So with that being said, I challenge you guys to see this as a humble reminder to appreciate the greats while we still have them. A guy like Larry Bird is half of the reason the NBA was saved in the 1980s. A guy like Larry Bird is a major factor in why so many NBA players are insanely rich in today's game. And a guy like Larry Bird is why basketball discourse today can still maintain at least a smidge of class while being surrounded by all the divisive vitriol.
1987 Defensive Player of the Year, but there was one person that wasn't happy about that.
You're honest.
Michael Jordan. Michael Cooper is a great on-ball denial, but check the other numbers, check the other stats. 78 steals, 43 blocks. This league gives defensive awards on reputation, and it just teased
Wait a minute,
me off.
Who wasn't happy about this?
Michael Jordan.
He said something about it?
Yeah, this is quotes. We're reading quotes. You never knew that?
No.
Really?
Coop, you was locking people up. Mike like, I'm out here locking people up too, but Coop, goddamn, how many times I gonna give it to him?
You know what? If that was any other Michael, I would say something, but that's MJ. That's MJ, so I'm gonna leave that alone. But you know what? Mike was a force in his own, but he's more of like stealing. Mike wasn't he was a good on-ball defender, but he wasn't
passing lanes.
Mike would play that passing lanes and do all that.
So Mike really played D.
He played D.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I should note up front that Magic Johnson was voted the league's MVP this year. You were the runner-up. You have any quarrel with the vote?
No, not at all. I think that both of us had good years, but sometimes you have to question what is the credentials for the MVP. No one really knows.
Yeah. What would you say they are?
How valuable you are to your team and to the league itself, and what you do to contribute to both of them.
Could a case be made for Michael Jordan then being the MVP?
Good case. for both, actually.
Let's define exactly what you did. I mean, 37 points per game. You took 28 shots a game. You were your team's offense, weren't you?
I was in the sense that we had to expand a lot of the other players' roles offensively, and it took some time for them to do that. I don't like to lead the league in scoring. I think that stereotypes you as an offensive player. But I think that other parts of my game was not acknowledged as well as it should have been. To have over 100 blocks and over 100 steals also. I think you have to be contributing in other areas.
Remember a while back when everyone was talking about the legitimacy of Michael Jordan's 1988 DPOY season? Some still argue that MJ didn't deserve that award. Now what's funny is not only do I disagree with that stance, but you could argue that MJ was robbed from winning another DPOY the year prior. It was the 1986 to 1987 NBA season. Michael Jordan was certainly a basketball phenomenon, but in many ways, he was still earning his stripes within the league. MJ was only in his third year as a pro and was just 23 years old. Sure, he was in the midst of averaging an astonishing 37 points per game, but there were still questions about whether or not that style of basketball could result in a championship. As Michael Jordan pointed out in the intro, there were also narratives about MJ focusing too much on his offense. But those claims likely came from people who weren't actually watching the games. Because Jordan wasn't just good defensively in 1987, but he was flat out excellent. That year, he established himself as a fantastic help defender, as he was an absolute hound when it came to blocking shots and trapping offensive players with the double team. MJ played defense like a free-roaming linebacker in the NFL, almost as if he had his own personal zone defense, just watching and waiting for his opportunity to strike. That year, MJ played all 82 games and averaged 2.9 steals and 1.5 blocks per game. He finished with a total of 236 steals and 125 blocks on the season. To this very day, Michael Jordan is the only guard in NBA history to get at least 200 steals and 100 blocks in a single season, which he did in back-to-back years. Here's a really crazy stat. Even if Michael Jordan was considered a center, he still would have been in the top 10 spots for blocks per game that season among centers. Despite the fact that they were barely a playoff team, Michael Jordan's impact on the Bulls' defense could clearly be seen, as Chicago was second in the league in points allowed and was in the top half of the league in defensive rating. So basically, based on the eye test, based on the numbers, and based on the impact he had on his team, it's pretty clear that Michael Jordan had a really solid case for the award. Well, MJ wasn't even in the top 5 for the DPOY. He finished in 8th. In fact, he wasn't on the first or second all-defense teams, partially because the guard position was so stacked with all-time great defenders. Now the guy who won it? That was the Lakers' 8-time all-defender, Michael Cooper. Make no mistake, Cooper was one of the greatest perimeter defenders that this game has ever seen, and during his days with the Showtime Lakers, he was often assigned to guard the league's best, like Michael Jordan and Larry Bird. Now from a numbers standpoint, MJ certainly has the edge over Cooper, but it's also worth mentioning that Cooper was right in his assessment during the intro. MJ is more of a risk taker as a defensive player, while Cooper is more of an on-ball defender who prefers to impede a player's progress rather than causing a turnover. I can't stress this enough. Michael Cooper was one of the greatest perimeter defenders of all time, but there's some other reasons his award comes into question. For one, only one player in the history of the NBA has won the Defensive Player of the Year award while starting in less than half of the games that season. And that was in fact Michael Cooper in 1987, who started in only 2 out of the 82 regular season games. Beyond that, he also averaged the fewest minutes per game of any winner in NBA history at 27.5. Now that's where things really start to get tricky. Should you even be eligible for a DPOY if you're not a starter? How impactful can you really be over the course of an entire game if you're barely playing over half of the minutes in the contest? Here's another question. Would you rather have 27.5 minutes of elite defense from Michael Cooper or 40 minutes of elite defense from Michael Jordan? I imagine the answer has got to be pretty obvious. Now here's the thing. Generally speaking, when it comes to NBA awards, the voters have almost always cared about team success, and Cooper's Lakers had a league-best 65-17 record, while Jordan's Bulls had only a 40-42 record. So maybe some could argue that it's Jordan who shouldn't be eligible for the award, since his team didn't even have a winning record. After all, of the 43 DPOYs in NBA history, only one of those went to a player on a losing team. Admittedly, that's not the best stat for Jordan's argument, but I'm about to make things even more interesting. That one time where a player won the DPOY while playing for a losing team was actually by Alvin Robertson of the San Antonio Spurs in 1986, and his team had a 35-47 record. Which begs the question, if Alvin Robertson can win the award with a 35-47 team, then why should MJ be disqualified on a 40-42 team in the very next season? You guys let me know your answer to that in the comment section below. Now it has to be said, although this debate has historically been between Michael Jordan and Michael Cooper, several other players had some truly great defensive campaigns as well, like the defending DPOY winner Alvin Robertson, who averaged a league-leading 3.2 steals per game. Also, the 7'4" Mark Eaton, who averaged a monstrous 4.1 blocks per game while leading all candidates in defensive rating and defensive win shares. So in conclusion, was Michael Jordan the most deserving of the DPOY award in 1987? Maybe, but I could argue in several different directions with all these great candidates. But what I can say is that Michael Jordan was absolutely more deserving than Michael Cooper, especially when you consider the load and the responsibility that these players carried. In this Versus series, we look at two greats of basketball history as we analyze their skills, achievements, and career totals, ending with a conclusion on who was the greater basketball player overall. Today, our matchup is a man known for his big game play, James Worthy, and a big man who tortured defenders down low, Kevin McHale. One man won 3 championships as a key member of the Showtime Lakers, while the other won 3 championships as one of the Twin Towers of the Boston Celtics. Starting with the basics, James Worthy was listed as a 6'9" small forward who weighed 229 pounds, while Kevin McHale was a 6'10" power forward who weighed 210 pounds. We'll compare these two greats with 4 major categories that sometimes differentiate depending on positions and playstyles. In this video for these two legendary forwards, the categories are scoring, rebounding, defense, and accolades. First off, scoring. Neither of these forwards were leading scorers, but they were both consistent bucket getters and were always an integral part of their team's offenses. Kevin McHale did almost all of his damage from the post, while Worthy was a combination of post play and transition basketball. Looking at the two side by side, we see that McHale averaged a career 17.9 points per game on 55.4% shooting. He also had a career high of 56 points against the Pistons in 1985. In the playoffs, though, he averaged 18.8 points per game on 56.1% shooting from the field, with a playoff high of 34 points on 2 separate occasions. On the other hand, Worthy averaged 17.6 points on 52.1% throughout his regular season career, with a career high of 38 points on 2 separate occasions. In the postseason, he averaged 21.1 points on 54.4% shooting, and his playoff high was 40 points against the Detroit Pistons in 1989. As you can tell with both of these players, they were basically the models of efficiency at their position. Starting with McHale, he was one of the most difficult players to guard, not just in the league at the time, but in the history of the NBA. In my opinion, amongst big men, he had the second greatest footwork of all time, trailing only Hakeem Olajuwon. He could score effectively with either hand, and his shot was extremely difficult to stop, as he not only had a gargantuan wingspan for a 6'10" player, but he also had an extremely high release point on his jumper, making it nearly impossible to block. McHale was so lethal in the low post that his teammates playfully referred to the low post as the quote torture chamber whenever someone was guarding him in that location. At the end of the day, this was his trusted bread and butter. Then in the case of Worthy, his incredible speed and aggressive tendencies made him the perfect running mate for Magic Johnson's Showtime offense. And more often than not, it was Worthy who was finishing the fast break with his Statue of Liberty dunk off of the Magic Johnson assist. That wasn't all though. If the offense slowed down and if they were forced to attack the defense in a half-court set, then Worthy was also extremely effective in those scenarios. Inside of 20 feet, he had a deadly face-up game. And one of the things that made him such a difficult assignment was the fact that he had one of the quickest first steps in NBA history. Seriously, unless the defender had elite lateral movement speed, Worthy was blowing by his defender basically at will. Ultimately, this scoring comparison is very, very close, as McHale has the slight advantage in terms of regular season production and efficiency. But the real edge goes to Worthy for his postseason play. There's a reason he was known as Big Game James, and that's in large part because he increased his scoring by roughly 4 points per game from the regular season to the playoffs. There were many examples of him taking over the Lakers offense, like in the 1988 NBA Finals, when he was named the Finals MVP thanks to his Game 7 performance where he had a monstrous 36-point triple-double. For this reason, I'm giving the edge in scoring to Worthy, as he was simply one of the greatest postseason players that the game has ever seen. Second up is rebounding. Now neither player was particularly elite in this aspect. As a 6'9" small forward, James Worthy averaged a career 5.1 rebounds per game, while Kevin McHale was a 6'10" power forward who averaged 7.3. So obviously, you have to factor in the difference in positions a little bit, seeing how power forwards usually get more rebounds in the low post area. The highest James got was 6.4 in 1985. He could rebound adequately, but he was usually the main recipient of Magic Johnson's fast break in the Showtime offense. So rather than crashing the boards, he was usually the first player sprinting to the offensive end of a court. Still, he could do it when it mattered, like in Game 7 of the '88 Finals when he pulled down 16 rebounds to go along with that triple-double, which naturally earned him the Finals MVP. Now Kevin McHale got as high as 9.9 rebounds per game in 1987, which certainly isn't elite for a guy his size, but also consider the fact that he shared the floor with a 7'1" Robert Parrish, and Larry Bird was a 6'9" player who loved to crash the boards as well. Ultimately, it's a category that you can't completely ignore because rebounding is so crucial as a tall forward, which both of these guys are. But there's no clear advantage on either side, so I'm gonna have to call this one a draw. The third topic is defense. Now, I certainly wouldn't describe Worthy as a bad defensive player, but he was never considered elite. He had quickness and a long wingspan that could complicate things for the offensive player, but he was never once an all-defender. In fact, he wasn't even the Lakers' go-to player for stopping wing scores, as that was Michael Cooper, who ended up making 8 all-defense teams. His Lakers were almost never considered as a top 5 defense in the league, as their identity was their high-octane offense. For his career, he averaged 1.1 steals and 0.7 blocks per game. Now on the other hand, McHale's Celtics were frequently among the best defensive teams in the league, and he was a major part of that as he was a hound in the paint, and his absurdly long wingspan made it extremely difficult to get low-post shots over his reach. During his playing days, he averaged 0.4 steals and 1.7 blocks per game. He made 6 all-defense team appearances, including 2 first team, and he even finished as high as 5th overall in the Defensive Player of the Year race in 1987. Ultimately, this category isn't all that close, as McHale has the clear edge over Worthy defensively. The fourth and final topic before my conclusion is accolades, and both of these players were well accomplished. Starting with Worthy, he was a 3-time NBA champion, won the Finals MVP in 1988, he was a 7-time All-Star and a 2-time All-NBA player. He was also a member of the NBA 75th anniversary team, and in his 12 seasons, he had averages of 17.6 points, 5.1 rebounds, 3 assists, 1.1 steals, and 0.7 blocks on 52.1% shooting. On the other hand, McHale was a 3-time NBA champion, a 7-time All-Star, and made one All-NBA team. He was also a 6-time All-Defender, won the 6th Man of the Year award twice before becoming a full-time starter, and he is also a member of the NBA 75th anniversary team. Over his career, he averaged 17.9 points, 7.3 rebounds, 1.3 assists, 0.4 steals, and 1.7 blocks on 55.4% shooting. Now for the conclusion. It's close. Very close. Both guys were big game performers and became even better in the postseason, and I don't think you can truly go wrong with either guy. Although James Worthy is my second favorite player of all time, I think I gotta put my bias aside and go with Kevin McHale. Yes, the offensive edge did go slightly in favor of Worthy, but at the end of the day, the gap in defense is far greater in favor of McHale, and I'd personally have a hard time picking a guy who's mostly an elite one-way threat over a guy who will be lethal on both ends of the court basically every night.
To Isaiah and his bad boy Pistons, I don't think there's ever been a more physical team than them.
Okay.
They impose their will on you.
Right.
Right. They beat you up, man.
Right.
And if you flinched, it was over for you.
Right.
They could do things very few teams could do. They can be physical, and then they had that 3-headed monster: Isaiah, Joe Dumars, and Vinnie Johnson.
Right.
You could do nothing
Vinnie
with
got
them.
cooking.
And I'm not even talking about John Sally and Rodman.
They had Mahorn the first year, Laimbeer.
That's right. Was it tough to play against it? Of course.
Right.
But, give them credit. They won back-to-back championships.
Correct.
I never take anything away from a champion.
Right.
And so they proved that style could win.
Right.
And they won with it. And so give them credit. And they, to me, one of the greatest teams as well. Because defensively, I don't know if we've seen a better team than the Pistons.
So it's been a reoccurring topic on this channel a lot recently. Who was the deepest team in NBA history? I think there's a lot of solid candidates for that title, and please, let me know in the comments section below who would be your choice for that title. I don't necessarily know with complete certainty the team I would pick, but it seriously might be this one. I'm talking about the 1988 to 1989 Detroit Pistons. What's amazing about this team is not only are they one of the most overall talented squads of all time, but I would argue that they're one of the most overlooked teams in NBA history. We're talking about a group of players that nearly won 3 straight NBA championships, with one of the greatest backcourts that the game of basketball has ever seen. During their run of dominance, they were able to beat Magic Johnson's Showtime Lakers, Larry Bird's Celtics, and Michael Jordan's Bulls. Not once, not twice, but for 3 straight seasons, they eliminated the Bulls out of the NBA playoffs. I think the reason why this group is one of the most overlooked teams of all time is simply because they were not very liked in their heyday by anyone outside of Detroit, seeing how they were known as the Bad Boy Pistons for their dirty and physical antics, and that was a reputation that they reveled in. Not only that, but the Bad Boy Pistons are now treated as a footnote to the story of Michael Jordan's legacy. Now, were they an obstacle for MJ and served as a launching pad for his career? Absolutely. But they were also one of the most dominant teams in NBA history, especially in 1989. This specific group was led by one of the greatest dual-threat point guards in the history of the league, Isaiah Thomas. This guy was an incredible ball handler, an amazing facilitator, and a terrific scorer. He also had ice water flowing through his veins, as he was one of the most clutch players that the game has ever seen. Like when he dropped an NBA record 25 points in a single quarter of the NBA Finals, in a game where he ended up with 43 points. Isaiah Thomas was the kind of player who could drop 40 points in an NBA playoff game, and the next night, he could get you 15 to 20 assists, and no one would bat an eye. Alongside of him was one of the most underrated players of all time, Joe Dumars. This guy had a solid handle of the basketball and was one of the all-time great perimeter defenders. In fact, on multiple occasions, Michael Jordan has referred to him as the best perimeter defender he's ever faced. At small forward, they had a lethal scoring wing known as Mark Aguirre. Just before he had joined the Detroit Pistons, he was the leader of the Dallas Mavericks, as he was averaging nearly 30 points per game for that group. And somehow, similar to guys like Alex English and Adrian Dantley, he has seemed to be lost and forgotten in history, despite being one of the best scorers of his era. At power forward, they had the enforcer, Rick Mahorn, who was not just a solid rebounder, but a guy who was a major part of their physical identity. And at center was one of the most famous villains in NBA history, Bill Laimbeer. Despite his notorious nicknames and reputation, he was known in his day for being a lot more than just a mean player. Laimbeer was one of the first stretch 5 centers of the NBA. He was also a guy who was frequently among the league leaders in rebounds, and he was a fantastic passer, and more specifically, a fantastic outlet passer. Coming off the bench, they had several guys who were capable of being a Sixth Man of the Year winner. The guy who was usually their sixth man was known as Vinny the Microwave Johnson. The reason they called him the Microwave is because of how quickly he could heat up, as he was a fantastic scoring spark plug for this team. The next off the bench was a back-to-back Defensive Player of the Year winner in Dennis Rodman. And at this point of his career, he was much leaner, but very strong and very quick. During his days with the Bulls, he was known for guarding guys like Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, and Shaquille O'Neal. But at this point of his career, he was more commonly assigned to guys like Magic Johnson, Scottie Pippen, and even occasionally Michael Jordan. Then their eighth man in the rotation was the 7'1" center James Edwards, who was a guy who averaged as high as 17 points per game during his career. This guy was a quality scoring option and would certainly be a starter on the vast majority of teams. But on this group, he was just their third most important big man. And then the ninth man in their rotation was the 6'11" John Salley, who was only at the age of 24 and was in the middle of the prime of his career. He wasn't a star player by any means, but he always played with hustle, heart, and energy, and was a quality role player even though he was one of the last guys off the bench. As I mentioned before, this team was stupid deep and had basically everything on their roster. From scorers, to passers, to defenders, to rebounders, there was basically no style of basketball that they couldn't play and excel in. Throughout the 1988 to 1989 regular season, they finished with a 63-19 record. They swept the Boston Celtics out of the first round 3-0. Then in the semifinals, they swept a very talented Milwaukee Bucks team 4-0. Then in the Eastern Conference Finals, they took out Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen in 6 games. And then, against the defending champion Los Angeles Lakers in the NBA Finals, who were previously undefeated in the Western Conference playoffs, they swept them as well, 4-0. Meaning they had a 15-2 record throughout the entirety of the postseason as they secured their championship. Not only is this team ridiculously underrated and overlooked, but they should even be in the argument for the greatest team in NBA history. The way that the passage of time has treated them is honestly a travesty, unless of course you believe they deserved it for their antics on the court. And a lot of people would argue as much.
You left the bad blood on the court for the most part, but not with Laimbeer. You never really ever liked Laimbeer in any social situation.
No.
Yeah.
And it's because he was a dirty player.
Right.
Now, he had to do what he had to do. I understand that. But you take like Ricky Mahorn, he'd hit you and all that, but he'd hit you. You know you're going to get hit.
Yeah.
But he didn't try to maim you.
Right.
Bill tried to hurt you.
Right.
And he was one of them guys. You shoot a jumper, he tried to slide his foot underneath your ankle so you twist your ankle, and that's why Parrish.
Did he really used to do that?
If you watch any of our old games, Parrish was always twisting his ankle against the Pistons. So one time I shot a jumper and Laimbeer did it to me, and I stepped on his foot, but I stepped on a high and twist my ankle. I don't know, a quarter or two later, he was shooting that jumper. I slid mine on there. That's the last time he ever did it.
Really?
Yeah. But he was, he had to play the way he had to play, and we all understood that. But if you carry it too far, you carry it over the line, you got to protect yourself.
I'm on record saying that Bill Laimbeer of the Bad Boy Pistons is the dirtiest player in NBA history. This 6'10" center was a talented rebounder, enforcer, and even a solid stretch 5. But more than anything, he was known for his tenacity and antics on the basketball court. It was bad enough that this was Laimbeer's reputation and actions on the court. But what made it even more aggravating to many spectators was the fact that he reveled in it. It was abundantly clear to everyone who watched him play that Laimbeer delighted in the fact that he was the supervillain of the NBA. The Bad Boy Pistons were hated league-wide for their physical defense that usually included many cheap shots. Although Isaiah Thomas was the face of the Pistons' offense, there's no question that Laimbeer was the one who was the face of the notorious defense. This devious persona earned him some wicked nicknames, like the Prince of Darkness, His Heinous, and Freddy, inspired by the horror-based character Freddy Krueger. Those were not the only unflattering names that he was called, though. In 1989, after the Pistons had eliminated the Bulls from the playoffs for the second straight season, Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner of the Bulls, was very unhappy with the Detroit big man. Not only had Laimbeer brought his usual physicality and antics to the series, but early on in Game 6, he elbowed Scottie Pippen in the head, which resulted in a concussion and a trip to the hospital. That's when Jerry Reinsdorf expressed his frustration and said, "He's a thug. He's a gangster. He shouldn't be in the league." He was far from the only NBA owner who felt that way. But not only was Laimbeer not kicked out of the league, but in the Wild West of the 1980s, he was very rarely suspended. For 10 straight seasons from 1983 to 1992, he played in at least 81 of the 82 games in the regular season. At one point, he played in 685 straight games. And by modern standards, there were plenty of incidents that were worthy of suspension during that stretch, including most of the hits that you've witnessed in this video. The frustration was building for the Pistons' competitors. Many players had grown weary of being consistently victimized by this arrogant bully. And if the league wasn't going to step in and do something about it, then it seemed like it would only be a matter of time before a player did. This brings us to the 1987 Eastern Conference Finals between the Boston Celtics and the Detroit Pistons. Boston won the first 2 games in their building, so when Game 3 happened in Detroit, the Pistons were desperate to turn things around. Take a listen to how things unfolded.
And while their offense was clicking in Game 3, there was something else that did the most damage.
And now they have to separate Horton and McHale and Laimbeer.
Bill said, look, we got to go out there and set the tone.
Listen to this slap.
We may lose the game, but we ain't going to lose the fight.
I'd like to have a mental edge with their best player. That was Bird. And if you could break him, you could break their whole unit.
No, it goes to Bird in the corner. And we're starting to see the bang-bang stuff now. Rodman is all over Bird. C-Sting goes baseline, goes underneath. Dishes off now to Bird. And there is a violent knockdown by Laimbeer. Oh, my. A completely unnecessary foul by Laimbeer, and he pulled Bird to the ground. He slammed him to the ground. The yellow, gutless way they do things here. Now Isaiah Thomas is coming over.
I could see I was already up in the air, and I was coming down, and I was going to hammer him.
And Laimbeer just takes him down.
And down we went. Oh, well, it happens.
Bird is gone. Laimbeer is gone.
In Game 4, the Bad Boys would maintain their level of physicality and took advantage of the shaken Celtics team. They tied up the series with an absolute beatdown, 145 to 119. Now the series was going back to Boston for Game 5. And this is when one of the Celtics players decided that enough was enough. Robert Parrish, the 7'1" center who has a history in martial arts, decided to take some swings at Laimbeer and struck him in the face, not once, but twice. Now here's the craziest part about all of this. Although the whistle was blown and the action stopped, after careful consideration, Parrish was not penalized in any way for these strikes. No ejection, no suspension, no technical foul, or even a common foul. The refs basically told Laimbeer to shake it off and resume the action. With such a lack of consequences for an obvious cheap shot, it kinda makes you wonder if the refs were indicating their own feelings about Laimbeer and his antics. Now the Celtics would go on to win the game in iconic fashion, thanks to the heroics of Larry Bird. They would also go on to win the series in the deciding 7th game, earning a trip to the NBA Finals for the 4th straight year. As for Bill Laimbeer, he wouldn't change his ways after the shot to the face. But at the very least, the players, and to a certain extent the referees, showed him that he could no longer get away with whatever he wanted without dealing with some kind of natural consequences of his own. It might have looked brutal, but ask any non-Detroit Pistons fans who was alive to see it, and they'll tell you that this was one of the most cathartic things they had ever seen on the basketball court. As all of you know, the San Antonio Spurs were eliminated out of the NBA Finals in 5 games by the New York Knicks, and the guy who had been previously getting referred to as the best player in the NBA today, Victor Wembanyama, had an incredibly underwhelming NBA Finals to say the least. It wasn't just his numbers, but it was the moments where he needed to step up and didn't. He obviously had the horrible turnover and personal foul at the end of Game 2, while also missing the potential game-winning shot. He had a major role to play in the largest blown deficit in NBA Finals history. He missed many pivotal free throws in situations where they had to have them. He allowed Mitchell Robinson to get the most important offensive rebound in Knicks history. And he shot only 42% from the field over the course of the series, which was down nearly 10% from his regular season average. And a lot of people think this was due to the fact that he was settling for too many jumpers and was playing way too soft down low. Yes, he's only 22 years old, and his supporting cast is also incredibly young. But no matter how you angle it, this was a terrible series for Victor Wembanyama. Some are saying that it's his tragic Johnson series, and that makes a lot of sense to me. Many NBA legends have had embarrassing moments in their youth during the NBA playoffs, and have then bounced back even stronger and completely redeemed their legacies in their later years. For example, Kobe Bryant famously had 4 straight air balls to close out a must-win game in the 1997 playoffs. LeBron James completely disappeared from the 2007 NBA Finals, putting up some of the worst numbers of his career. And as I alluded to earlier, Magic Johnson choked away the 1984 NBA Finals when he dribbled out the clock to lose a game, and then had a boneheaded turnover to lose another game, thus earning himself the nickname Tragic Johnson. The examples go on, but the point remains the same. The greatest players of all time generally bounce back and redeem their legacies in such a way that we almost completely forget about the mistakes that once defined them. With that being said, several viewers and members have asked me the question, are we wrong to assume that San Antonio is going to bounce back from this? Don't you think we're assuming too much about Victor Wembanyama? Listen, I do think Wemby will bounce back from this. I do think his skills, size, and mentality indicate that he's going to end his career as one of the all-time greats. But those viewers and members are probably right. I am assuming too much. You can make the argument that Victor Wembanyama is a unique alien, unlike anything we've ever seen before. And that may be true when you look at a specific combination of skills and abilities. But in the vast history of the NBA, the most comparable player that we've ever seen to Victor Wembanyama, in terms of skills, build, and hype, was none other than the Hall of Famer Ralph Sampson. Just like Wemby, he was 7 foot 4 inches tall, had the skills to be a threat in the open court, was an incredible two-way player, and was projected to be one of the greatest players of all time. Just like Wemby, he made it to the NBA Finals in only the 3rd season of his career, while having an incredibly impressive run throughout the Western Conference playoffs that had people hyped about his future. Just like Wemby, Sampson defeated the defending champions in the Western Conference Finals, which was a team that was previously being talked about among the greatest teams of all time.
Ralph, thank you. Congratulations. He's celebrating. Let's go back to Dick.
The Rockets are Western Conference champions. And during the year, Tommy, a lot of people were saying that the Lakers may be the best of all time. And Pat Riley was...
And just like Wemby, he came up small in the NBA Finals and was eliminated by the older team that was ready to win. When you look at the progression of the two players side by side, it's honestly alarming how much they match.
I say this with respect about Wemby. As good as he is, he's going to need to get stronger, because when you become a dominant big man, people go to force. And a lot of times, he couldn't handle that, that push. And for example, that offensive rebound that Mitchell Robinson got. So.
Very serious. Are you surprised at how Ralph Sampson played so soft in this game today? want you to talk about the Houston Rockets and the impact they have made this year.
I think they found that they belong in the upper echelon. They have in talent right there an awful lot of things going for them. They're only operating at about 50% of what their potential is. When they nail down some easy, simple things next season, watch out for the Rockets.
That's the thing. It's what comes afterwards for Sampson that's a cautionary tale. The Rockets would have a 42-40 record the following season. Sampson would never again make it to the NBA Finals. He would never again be an All-NBA player. And he would never again reach the levels of promise and wonder that he had in the 1986 postseason. 2 years later, he would no longer be a Houston Rocket. And by the age of 31, he would no longer be an NBA player. Unfortunately, his chronic back problems utterly derailed his career, and for a while, Houston fans had to reminisce about the better days of the past. To be clear, I do not think this is going to happen to Wemby, but at the same time, no one thought that the Ralph Sampson Rockets wouldn't bounce back after 1986. They had all the youth and all the talent that one could dream of, but it just didn't pan out with Sampson the way people expected. The moral of the story is you can't take this stuff for granted. Cherish every moment of elite basketball. Cherish every moment of hype and wonder. And enjoy the privilege of making it to the NBA Finals. Because no matter how good a team looks, and no matter how much potential a player has, nothing in this league is ever a given. What were the top 10 greatest Finals MVP performances in NBA history? Well, this list is somewhat subjective, but I think I've put together a pretty solid one. First, let me establish a couple details about this list. The Finals MVP award was introduced to the league in 1969, which unfortunately means that a Wilt Chamberlain performance and all of Bill Russell's performances will not be considered for the list. Yeah, it's lame, but I want to stick to the official MVP awards. And if you would like to see these legends get some love, there's plenty of other videos that do that on this channel. Also consider the fact that these are the greatest Finals performances from the greatest players of all time. So just because a specific performance doesn't make the top 10 list doesn't mean that I didn't think it was great, or even that I didn't think it was amazing. It just means that the bar is set absurdly high. So with that being said, here is my list of honorable mentions. Got it? Great. Now that you're all foaming at the mouth, let's get started. Number 10, Magic Johnson in 1987. The 1987 Finals was the third and final matchup of that decade between the Lakers and Celtics. Offensively, Magic dominated the series in as many ways as possible, as it was one of the strongest dual-threat series that the league has ever seen, in terms of scoring and facilitating. He was also absurdly efficient, as he shot 54.1% from the field and 96% from the free throw line. On the series, he put up 26.2 points, 13 assists, 8 rebounds, and 2.3 steals. Despite the pass-first tendencies, he actually led all players in scoring in 3 out of the 6 games that series. He also had the game-winning baby hook shot in the crucial 4th game in Boston Garden. Magic ultimately led his Lakers to win the series in 6 games, and it was such a dominant performance that even Larry Bird basically conceded that Magic Johnson was the best player in the game at that point. Number 9, Shaquille O'Neal in 2002. It was the 3rd championship of the Shaq and Kobe three-peat, and New Jersey basically never had much hope. And the biggest reason for that was the fact that they had absolutely no answer for the Diesel, as he dominated with 36.3 points, 12.3 rebounds, 3.8 assists, and 2.8 blocks on 59.5% shooting. As a result of his power and presence in the paint, all of New Jersey's bigs were consistently in foul trouble. And to top it off, Shaq hit 45 of his 68 free throw attempts during the series, which is 66.2%. That's certainly not elite, but by Shaquille O'Neal standards, that's incredible. His 145 points over the course of the series is the most points ever scored in an NBA Finals sweep. Number 8, Michael Jordan in 1991. This was a highly anticipated matchup between Magic and Michael, the Los Angeles Lakers and the Chicago Bulls. The Lakers took the first game, but after that point, Jordan began to take control, and the Bulls never looked back, winning the next 4 games straight. At one crucial stretch during Game 2, Jordan hit 13 straight field goals without a miss, and finished the game with 33, 13, and 7 on a ridiculous 83% shooting. On the series as a whole, he averaged 31.2 points, 11.4 assists, 6.6 rebounds, 2.8 steals, and 1.4 blocks on 55.8% shooting. What's incredible is how he destroyed the competition at different points with his scoring and then with his facilitating, as Jordan averaged only one less assist than Magic did over that series, while being more efficient and while outscoring him by nearly 13 points per game. It's worth mentioning that Jordan also hit the most important shot of the series, where he made this game-tying basket which forced overtime in Game 3, where they eventually prevailed. Number 7. Hakeem Olajuwon in 1995. In what was expected to be a colossal matchup with Shaquille O'Neal and the Orlando Magic, Hakeem proved why he was the best and most skilled big man in the sport, as he had a tremendous impact in almost every aspect of the game. On the series, he put up 32.8 points, 11.5 rebounds, 5.5 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks on 48.3% shooting. The Dream led his Rockets to sweep the Orlando Magic, as he led all players in scoring in each of the 4 games. Considering the fact that they were only the 6th seed, this was one of the more improbable champions in NBA history, but it also speaks volumes about Olajuwon's clutch gene in the postseason. Number 6. Nikola Jokic in 2023. At this point in time, the Joker was at the absolute peak of his powers, and the Miami Heat across from him were the greatest victims of his wrath. It didn't matter that Miami had a top 5 DPOY finalist in Bam Adebayo. Jokic still did what he wanted when he wanted, as he averaged 30.2 points, 14 rebounds, 7.2 assists, and 1.4 blocks on 58.3% shooting. He also shot a stellar 42.1% from three-point range. The craziest part about all of this was how Jokic was uncharacteristically elite on defense, as he had the best defensive rating of any player that series, while also leading all players in blocked shots. His impact for his team's success cannot be overstated, and no game sums that up better than the championship-clinching 5th game, where he had 28 points and 16 rebounds while shooting a remarkable 75% from the field. The rest of his Nuggets teammates only shot 38.2% from the field in that contest. When you look at it that way, you can't help but appreciate the overwhelming value of this superstar player. Number 5. Tim Duncan in 2003. It was a finals matchup between Tim Duncan's Spurs and the New Jersey Nets. Many people didn't witness this remarkable performance, as the 2003 championship was one of the least viewed NBA finals of league history. But those who did see it fortunately got to see the great Tim Duncan at his very best. In this series, he put up an unreal 24.2 points, 17 rebounds, 5.3 assists, and 5.3 blocks on 49.5% shooting. The Nets had no answer for him anywhere on the court, as he started off the series in Game 1 with 32 points, 20 rebounds, 6 assists, and 7 blocks in a 12-point victory. But the way he closed out the series was arguably even more impressive. In the championship-clinching 6th game, he had 21 points, 20 rebounds, 10 assists, and 8 blocks. But there's actually some controversy tied to this game, and some people believe that 2 more blocked shots should have been credited to Duncan. Only 4 players in history have ever officially achieved the quadruple-double, and no one has done it in the playoffs. And yet Tim Duncan nearly did it on the game's biggest stage and in the final game of the season. That's legendary stuff if you ask me. Number 4. Shaquille O'Neal in 2001. It was the second of the Lakers' 3 straight championships, and Shaq was his usual dominant self on both ends of the court. He absolutely destroyed the Philadelphia Bigs with 33 points, 15.8 rebounds, 4.8 assists, and 3.4 blocks on 57.3% shooting. Shaq bullying the opponent in the paint and putting up these numbers over a 5-game series is impressive enough as it is. But what makes it even more astonishing is how he did this against that season's Defensive Player of the Year, Dikembe Mutombo, and he was still unstoppable and wasn't even contained in the slightest. On the other end, the 76ers were struggling to score in the paint, as Shaq's contested shots and his 3.4 blocks was his personal best in the finals. Number 3, LeBron James in 2016. It's hard to overstate how incredible this performance was for James. A comeback from a 3-1 deficit, making one of the most iconic defensive plays of all time in the closing moments, to defeat the greatest regular season team ever, the 73-9 Warriors, while delivering the first and only championship in Cleveland Cavaliers history. Over the course of that 7-game series, he put up 29.7 points, 11.3 rebounds, 8.9 assists, 2.6 steals, and 2.3 blocks on 49.4% shooting. This is the only time in NBA Finals history where a player has led both teams in all 5 major stat categories. Offensively, defensively, and in the clutch situations, this was a legacy-defining moment for LeBron. Number 2, Michael Jordan in 1993. It was a matchup with Charles Barkley and the Phoenix Suns, where the Bulls secured their 3rd straight championship in 6 games, and Jordan was arguably never better than he was in these finals. To his credit, Barkley had an incredible series of his own, but it hardly mattered because Jordan was simply on another level. On the series, he put up 41 points, 8.5 rebounds, 6.3 assists, and 1.7 steals on 50.8% shooting. He led all 6 games in scoring. He scored at least 40 points in 4 straight games, including a 55-point performance in a close Game 4 victory. And his 41 points per game is the highest single series average in finals history. Dan Marley of the Phoenix Suns was a strong 6'6" wing, who was on the NBA's second all-defense team that season, which makes him the league's 2nd best defender at his position. But the reality is, Michael made him look like a bad defender because of how brutally he dominated him. If Jordan has just a pretty good series, then it's likely that the Bulls lose in these finals. But because he had what some consider the greatest finals performance of all time, Chicago was able to close it out in 6 games. Number 1, Shaquille O'Neal in 2000. Every once in a while, I go back and I watch this series, and it leaves me in awe every time, especially the first 2 games. In my opinion, no player has ever had a greater impact and influence on a final series than Shaq did in 2000. Over the 6 games, he averaged 38 points, 16.7 rebounds, 2.3 assists, and 2.7 blocks on 61.1% shooting. He led all 6 games in scoring. He led 5 out of 6 games in rebounding, and he led 5 out of 6 games in blocked shots. The Lakers' game plan was obvious heading into the series, as they ran the offense almost completely through Shaq. And yet Indiana still couldn't slow him down, despite the fact that they knew that information, and regardless of the fact of Rick Smits being several inches taller. He controlled the momentum of the game, its tempo, its physicality, and even the spirits of the opponent, as Indiana appeared demoralized at times during the opening games of Shaq's 40-point and 20-rebound performances. Between the 12 Pacers on the roster, they had a total of 159 personal fouls over the course of the 6 games. And of the 5 players who spent time guarding Shaq, they counted for 102 of those fouls. As a result, Shaq completely disrupted their rotations, as there was almost no aspect where his impact couldn't be seen on the court. Kobe had his iconic moment in Game 4, where he sealed the game after Shaq fouled out. But other than that instance, Kobe had a rough series, averaging only 15 points on 36.7% shooting. The biggest help that Shaq had was all the shooters he freed up by drawing the extra attention, by having the defense collapse upon him. So in a sense, Shaq even deserves some credit for their success as well. When you consider production and overall positive impact on the game, 2000 Shaq is my choice for the greatest finals MVP of all time. So as expected, the Lakers were eliminated out of the second round by the Oklahoma City Thunder, and LeBron is now heading into the offseason as a free agent. So for the sake of this topic, I'm assuming that LeBron is now done playing as a Los Angeles Laker. Now before I get into the meat and potatoes of this topic, let me first admit something as an NBA YouTuber. I've grown very wary of talking about LeBron James. And honestly, it's not really because of LeBron, but rather it's because of all the people who are involved in the discussion around him. In all my years of watching the NBA, LeBron has to be the most polarizing figure that I have ever seen. If you say just one thing critical of this guy, then his fans are going to come out with their pitchforks, claiming you're a hater and that you don't know basketball. On the other hand, if I say anything even slightly complimentary about this guy, then his haters also come out with their pitchforks, saying that I've been bought out by Clutch Sports, that I'm an idiot, and that I've lost all credibility. I don't just think that this tribalistic outrage is exhausting, but to be frank, I also think it's often childish. I don't mind if you're a LeBron fan or if you hate LeBron, you're welcome here. But as for me, I don't accept automatically getting put into one of these camps based on my honest perspective on his abilities or lack thereof. Yes, he's not my favorite player, he's not my GOAT, and I don't like some of his antics. But I can also recognize that he's an all-time great, and I'm not going to try to find a way to spin everything he's ever done in his career into some kind of negative. So with all of this being said, I'm making a video today that I think is naturally gonna piss off both sides. Because as a man in his mid-30s who's been a Laker fan my entire life, I can confidently say that LeBron's time in Los Angeles has been layered and complex. There's been some great things and there's been some bad things, and I would be disingenuous if I ignored one or the other. So let's go back in time, well before LeBron James arrived in Los Angeles. In the 2012 NBA offseason, the Lakers were 2 years removed from their most recent championship, and were looking for a way to return to the mountaintop. Kobe Bryant was still elite, but they needed reinforcements, so they then stunned the basketball world by adding Steve Nash and Dwight Howard, giving them one of the most intimidating lineups that had ever been seen on paper. Many analysts were speculating if they could beat the Bulls' 72-10 record. Well, let's just say that they didn't meet expectations. After going winless through the preseason, the Lakers started the year with a 1-4 record, resulting in them firing their head coach just 5 games into the regular season. Beyond that, injuries absolutely devastated this veteran roster, and their chemistry was garbage as well. Although the team started gaining momentum heading into the playoffs, all of that came to an abrupt halt when Kobe Bryant tore his Achilles. Then these Lakers were swept out of the first round of the playoffs, which solidified them as one of the most disappointing teams in NBA history. Steve Nash was soon turning 40 years old. The fate of the team hinged on Kobe returning from a serious injury at the age of 35, and a disgruntled Dwight Howard was testing the free agent market. Suddenly, the once prestigious Lakers franchise was now a very desperate organization. Despite begging Dwight Howard to stay with a massive banner at Staples Center, he left to the Houston Rockets. Kobe would go on to have more devastating injuries over the next 3 years, meaning the Lakers were suddenly devoid of talent. They won 27 games in 2014, 21 games in 2015, and a franchise-worst 17 games in 2016, which was the year that Kobe retired. During that whole stretch, the Lakers were trying to recruit marquee free agents, like Dwayne Wade, Carmelo Anthony, DeMarcus Cousins, and LaMarcus Aldridge. But each and every time, the team was turned down. During the famous free agency of Kevin Durant in 2016, the Lakers couldn't even secure a meeting with the star. The Lakers were not just a losing franchise, but they were quickly becoming irrelevant. Many were saying that the mystique and aura that once surrounded the organization was now completely gone. To make matters even worse, the upper management were making decisions that were unforgivably stupid. After missing on a meeting with Kevin Durant, their very first acquisition of the 2016 offseason was when the Lakers signed Timothy Mozgov to a 4-year, $64 million contract. That's right, the Lakers were so desperate that they paid a premium for a backup center who averaged 6 points per game. To add insult to injury, the Lakers doubled down and gave a 4-year, $72 million contract to an aging Luol Deng. Within 3 seasons, Mozgov and Deng wouldn't even be in the NBA anymore, let alone with the Lakers franchise. In 2017, the Lakers won 26 games, and in 2018, the Lakers won 35 games, meaning Los Angeles went 5 straight seasons without making the playoffs, and were well under 500 each season. As a lifelong Laker fan, this franchise felt dead, hopeless, and genuinely embarrassing. I thought the glory days were dead and gone for good. And that is when LeBron James showed up. Maybe making Magic Johnson an executive was the first major domino to fall in a positive direction. But LeBron was definitely the first player acquisition that showed how serious we were. All you gotta do is dig into my past social media pages to see how elated I was that we got LeBron. 2 years later, the Lakers were NBA champions once again. It would not be crazy to suggest that LeBron saved the Lakers franchise. Now, could they have been able to turn the ship around if they never signed him? Perhaps. But without question, the 5 years before LeBron showed up were the darkest days in franchise history, that even had Clippers fans laughing at us. So to sum it up, I was grateful for LeBron joining the Lakers. But just because a union was good in 2018 doesn't mean it was good in 2024, 2025, and 2026. At one point, the Lakers absolutely needed LeBron. That doesn't mean that they still need him. In total, LeBron spent 8 seasons in Los Angeles. They won 1 championship, made 1 finals appearance, 2 conference finals appearances, and made it to the playoffs in 6 out of the 8 seasons. Now, should this be considered a successful stint? Honestly, yes and no. Yes, from the perspective of what the Lakers organization was right before LeBron showed up, and yes, from the perspective that the Lakers won a championship during this tenure. For almost every single organization, a championship in the span of 8 seasons is going to be seen as a great thing. But on the other hand, the reason you might say it's not is because it's the Lakers. In the history of their franchise before LeBron showed up, they made it to the NBA Finals in 30 out of their 72 attempts, which is a remarkable 41.7% of the time. Meanwhile, LeBron made it to the NBA Finals in just 1 out of his 8 attempts, equaling a percentage of 12.5. Even if you compare the average 8-year stretch of the Lakers, they were often more successful when LeBron wasn't on the roster. The Lakers won a championship 22.2% of the time before LeBron, and only 12.5% of the time with LeBron. Now, to be fair to James, these numbers are probably somewhat biased towards older generations, especially in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, since there were fewer teams and it was mathematically easier to make it to the finals back then. But then again, even if you track these numbers since the turn of the millennium, the non-LeBron-led Lakers made it to the finals a much greater 36.8% of the time, compared to LeBron's 12.5%. So again, was LeBron's time in Los Angeles a success? Well, I think it all depends on your perspective. In terms of their entire rich history of success, no. This was certainly an underwhelming 8-year stretch compared to that. But when you consider their 5 utterly embarrassing years before his arrival, then yeah, I would much rather have this 8-year stretch with LeBron than more of that. If you asked me my honest opinion, I would tell you that I cannot definitively say yet whether or not this has been a successful stretch. Because I think it kind of depends on what the Lakers look like after LeBron's departure. Will they go back to their glorious rate of success that they had in the 72 years before James? Or will it be more like the dark ages of Jim Buss and Mitch Kupchak? Only time will tell.
After being a fan of NBA basketball for several decades at this point, I've noticed the tendencies of the league office and of the media. To put it simply, the media doesn't always play fairly. Some guys are just celebrated for basically everything they do. I'm talking about the poster children of the league. The guys that, for one reason or another, have been embraced by the media and are pushed as the role models of the league. Take for example a player like Michael Jordan. Now yes, I firmly believe that he is the greatest player in basketball history, but 2 things can be true at once. It was within the NBA's best interest to promote Michael Jordan and convince everyone that they want to be like Mike. He was sold, in a way, as the hero of the league. Obviously, Michael Jordan is celebrated for the championships he won, but some of his performances are celebrated and remembered fondly even though they came in defeat. Like Game 2 in the first round of the 1986 playoffs, where Jordan dropped an NBA postseason record 63 points against the Boston Celtics. Regardless of the final score, that was a legendary performance that deserves to be commemorated on a frequent basis. But what if I told you that there was a similar performance in the NBA's past, but it is almost never celebrated to the same extent, because it came from a quote villain of the league rather than a hero? I'm talking about one utterly incredible performance from the highly controversial NBA champion Isiah Thomas. Whether it was back in the 1980s when he was in his prime, or even today when we're looking at his career in hindsight, the NBA media has always been reluctant to embrace this star and promote his all-time great performances. And honestly, that's not surprising if you know his history. Isiah Thomas was the famous leader of the bad boy Detroit Pistons, a team that was notorious for their rebellious attitude and for their physically punishing defense. It was very common during that era for the Pistons to commit an excessive foul that would result in an all-out brawl between both teams. And the most annoying part was that they reveled in it. They took pride in the fact that they were the hated villains of the NBA. So to put it bluntly, there wasn't much love for the Pistons from the other teams around the league or from the general basketball audience. The long-term consequences of this have been extensive. Isiah Thomas was kept off of the 1992 Dream Team because of how the players felt about him. And Isiah is also very rarely brought up today in the conversation of the greatest point guards of all time, even though he certainly deserves to be in it. Again, I believe another one of those long-term consequences is the fact that the media and the league basically never talk about what is arguably the most heroic playoff performance of all time. It happened in the 1988 NBA Finals between the defending champion Los Angeles Lakers and these Detroit Pistons. The Pistons were up 3-2 in the series, with Game 6 being played in Los Angeles. Detroit had a golden opportunity to win their first championship of the decade, but in order for that to happen, their star player was going to have to excel on the court. The Lakers were leading 56-48 in the third quarter, when Isiah Thomas decided to take over completely. Isiah was making basically everything, like runners, contested jumpers, and driving layups. He scored 14 straight points for the Pistons, and the momentum was beginning to swing in their favor. But that's when tragedy struck. With a little under 5 minutes left in the third, Isiah rolled his ankle, and was in agonizing pain. Based on his time spent on the ground, no one expected Thomas to be able to continue. And before you think this was an over-dramatized situation, there is visual evidence that Isiah's ankle wasn't just hurt, but it had swelled like a balloon.
Came back and played on 1 foot.
You know, during that period of time, I was laying there thinking like,
this is it. You were thinking that you had to do it this game right there, right?
Yeah, and because we came to win Game 6, right?
Yeah.
And all the heartache that we had went through, the mistakes that I had made, and then I started thinking about like, you know, my mom and stuff, and just like I got to find a way to play, just to do something, just to get back into the game.
Somehow, Isiah pushed through the pain and was returning to the court. Walking on that ankle alone must have been very difficult, but to play basketball on it and stand out among the rest is a feat that's hard to even fathom. There was 3 minutes and 44 seconds left in the third when Isiah rejoined the action, and somehow he maintained his fire as he continued to hit ridiculous shot after ridiculous shot. Despite playing on 1 foot, Isiah scored 11 of the Pistons' final 15 points of the quarter. In other words, Thomas scored an NBA Finals record 25 points in the third quarter alone. This is a record that still stands to this very day. Healthy or not, no other player has ever scored that many points in a single quarter of an NBA Finals game. And again, Isiah did this on an ankle that was roughly twice its normal size. The fourth quarter was an intense back and forth affair. Down by 1 point with just over 1 minute remaining, Isaiah Thomas yet again hit an incredible baseline jumper to give him 43 points on the evening and a 100-99 lead over the Lakers. The Pistons continued to hold a 1-point lead with less than 20 seconds left in the ballgame, but unfortunately for Detroit, Bill Laimbeer apparently fouled Kareem Abdul-Jabbar on this skyhook, in what is now known as one of the most controversial whistles in the history of the league. This play is now famously called the Phantom Foul. Kareem would go on to make both free throws and the Lakers would win Game 6. Los Angeles would go on to win Game 7 in controversial fashion as well, making the final 2 games of this series some of the greatest what-if moments in Pistons history. So to recap, at the end of Game 6, Isaiah Thomas had 43 points, 8 assists, and 6 steals on 56%. And of course, the single quarter record to go along with that. In my opinion, if Michael Jordan should be celebrated for his 63 against the Boston Celtics in a loss, and if LeBron James should be celebrated for his 50-point game in a loss in the 2018 finals, then there's no question that we should significantly honor this record-breaking performance from Isaiah Thomas as well, especially when you consider what he had to push through in order to do it.
Dirk, battles. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. Playing each other twice in the NBA championship, you're going to walk away with some scars. You're going to walk away with a healthy version of dislike and a healthy version of how much you respect and how much love that you can have for a competitor. I love Dirk as a career he had, and a career that is a legendary career that a lot of people still, once again, don't talk about. And just to be able to compete against him and win a championship in 06, that really solidified like my career and my talents. And then to watch him come back and win his in 2011, even though it hurt us as a team, as a fan of the game, I can appreciate what that did for the game of basketball and what that did for one of the game's greatest players.
One of the most incredible comebacks in NBA Finals history.
That one championship was enough. He'll need to win 3, 4, 5.
Every once in a while, a player sticks around for so long that people lose track of how lethal he was in his prime. There are many examples of players who fit that description, like Vince Carter and Dwight Howard. But my favorite example of that is none other than Dirk Nowitzki. Dirk was a 7-foot power forward / center who played 21 years of his career faithfully for the Mavericks. He was also a 14-time All-Star and made 12 All-NBA teams. He's currently 6th on the all-time scoring list with 31,560 points. Everybody knows that Dirk is an all-timer and a future Hall of Famer, but the area I want to focus on in this video is the prime of his career, because Dirk was truly something else during that time, and people are either too quick to forget or too young to fully understand his impact during that time. So let's evaluate his greatness by taking it back to the beginning of his career up through his prime days. Dirk was drafted in 1998 with the 9th overall pick by the Milwaukee Bucks, before they ended up trading him to the Dallas Mavericks for the big man, Robert Tractor Traylor, in what was possibly the most regrettable decision in Bucks history. But it didn't look that way initially, since Dirk's career got off to a very slow start. The 98-99 season was a lockout-shortened year that only had 50 regular season games. Dirk was only 20 years old and was having a difficult time adjusting to the style of American basketball. A skinny, lengthy perimeter big man wasn't something that was common in the late 90s, and the physicality was taking its toll on him. Fans were even sarcastically calling him Irk Nowitzki due to the lack of D in his game. In only 20 minutes a game, Dirk averaged 8.2 points and 3.4 rebounds on just 40% shooting. It was also a very forgettable season for the Mavericks as a whole, as the team missed the playoffs and finished with a 19-31 record. It was so difficult on Dirk that he even said he considered leaving the NBA and heading back to Germany to play out his basketball career over there. Fortunately for us all, he didn't end up doing that. Several changes were made for his sophomore season. For one, Mark Cuban purchased the team. Dirk credited Cuban for changing the team's atmosphere into a winning culture. Under Don Nelson's coaching, and with another year of development, Nowitzki significantly improved his play and all of his numbers, averaging 17.5 points, 6.5 rebounds, and 2.5 assists on 46% shooting, which was good enough to finish as the runner-up for the Most Improved Player award. They didn't make the playoffs this season either, but the following year is when their winning days would begin. From the 2001 to 2010-2011 season, the Mavericks had over 50 wins each year with Dirk leading the way. Over this 10-year stretch, he averaged 24.3 points, 8.8 rebounds, and 2.8 assists on 48% shooting, 38.5% from 3, and 88% from the free throw line. This is a point I want to take a moment to emphasize, is this man's uniqueness and efficiency. During this era of basketball, the game was dominated by bruising back-to-the-basket big men like Shaquille O'Neal, Tim Duncan, Kevin Garnett, Chris Webber, and Amari Stoudemire. And then there was Dirk Nowitzki, who dominated with finesse, fadeaways, and efficient shooting from distance. During Dirk's prime, the league was shooting less than half the amount of three-pointers they're shooting today, and yet still he stood out in that era with that style. The truth is, the man was so ahead of his time that he shouldn't have been as good as he was, given the era he played in. A player like Dirk Nowitzki is made for today's game, and there's no question in my mind that he would have an absolute feast in this current era. Speaking of efficiency, his most efficient season of his career was the 2006-2007 season, where he averaged 24.6 points, 8.9 rebounds, and 3.4 assists on 50.2% from the field, 41.6% from 3, and 90.4% from the free throw line. That's a historic 50-40-90 season. When you factor in his size, his sharp shooting abilities, and his signature fadeaway, you can begin to see how a prime Dirk Nowitzki was one of the most indefensible players of all time. There were so many occasions where he was going to score, and there was absolutely nothing the defender could do about it. It was that 50-40-90 season where his Mavericks won a franchise record 67 games, and he was named the league's MVP. Now this is where some of Dirk's prime years get a little bit tricky. As we mentioned, the Mavericks won a lot of games during that era, and were often going to the Western Conference playoffs as a high-seeded team. Yet despite that, the Mavericks often came up short in the playoffs. An often forgotten aspect of Dirk's legacy is that before the 2011 NBA Finals, the NBA community by and large viewed Dirk as a player who was an underperformer in the postseason. Some would even go as far as saying he was a choker. I don't think I would go that far, but there is some merit to it. In the 2006 NBA Finals, the Mavericks had a 2-0 lead in the series over the Miami Heat and then lost the next 4 straight. Some people believe that had more to do with the refs than Dirk and the Mavericks, but I digress. In the following year, Dirk's MVP season, where they won 67 games, they were upset in the first round by a seemingly less talented Golden State Warriors team. This was an MVP-led Dallas Mavericks team that had just won a franchise record 67 games and was the top seed in the conference, losing in the first round to an 8th-seeded team in 6 games. And then, in the next 3 years after that, his Mavericks lost in the first or second round, despite being a 50-plus win team each year. These were significantly huge blows to the legacy of Dirk Nowitzki, but we all know how he redeemed himself. The famous 2011 NBA Finals, where Dirk's Mavericks upset the super team Miami Heat of LeBron, Wade, and Bosh. I don't think there was ever a time in NBA history where one series mattered more to one player's legacy than the 2011 Finals mattered to Dirk's legacy. He showed up big, dropped his 26 points per game and 9.7 rebounds per game while securing the Finals MVP. But if he hadn't pulled that off, well then people would still remember him as a great player who couldn't get it done in the postseason. Fortunately, he did win in the Finals and his legacy was saved. With all of this being said, I personally think it's pretty remarkable that he even won a championship. Just about the entirety of his career, he was lacking superstar help. He had Steve Nash early in his career, but at that point, Nash was not the player he would be in Phoenix. Who else did he have? Michael Finley? Jason Terry? Tyson Chandler? Josh Howard? An old Jason Kidd? He was basically never a part of a trio or even a duo that you would expect to win championships. If you think about many of the great players who played in that era, many of them were much more fortunate with the co-stars they got to play with. Kobe had said that for the longest time he had tried to recruit Dirk to play with him on the Lakers. Imagine if that had happened. How much winning do you think Dirk would have done then? But Dirk had always turned him down, because he never wanted to leave his Mavericks. And honestly, that's what makes Dirk so special. He could have won more elsewhere, he could have been a part of a super team, but instead he was loyal and played 21 years for the same franchise, which is the most seasons in NBA history for a player to play with only one team. He wasn't the quickest, he wasn't the strongest, and he wasn't the greatest defensive player. But the truth is, Dirk was a loyal legend who wasn't expected to win a championship, and given his circumstances, he probably shouldn't have, but he did. And that's much more than many legends can say. He wasn't the greatest ever at his position, he wasn't an all-time great two-way player, but he was an all-time great from an efficiency standpoint, and he was one of the hardest players to guard the NBA has ever seen. He was also one of a kind, and he did it his way. I said it once and I'll say it again. The way he played his game, there is absolutely zero question in my mind that he would torch today's league.
The NBA Hall of Famer, Dennis Keith Rodman. What if I told you that one of the most fascinating periods of his career is one that many people don't even know about, which was a small window of time filled with many highs, lows, and plenty of controversy. As you all know, the Worm was a 5-time NBA champion who won 2 titles with the Pistons and 3 with the Chicago Bulls. He's one of the top 5 greatest rebounders of all time, and he's one of the top 5 greatest defensive players in NBA history. The vast majority of his career is well documented and well known by the general audience. But contrary to popular belief, there was another fascinating chapter in his story, even after his time with the Bulls. At the end of the 1997 to 1998 NBA season, the Bulls were celebrating their 6th championship in 8 seasons. But the spoils of success were bittersweet, because the Bulls general manager, Jerry Krause, was determined to blow up the very roster that had made his name famous. Phil Jackson was forced out of his head coaching position. Michael Jordan retired in response to Jackson's firing. Scottie Pippen was traded to the Houston Rockets, and the 37-year-old Dennis Rodman was simply cut by the Bulls management, leaving him as a free agent for any potential suitors within the league. The thing is, there was no interest, at least for a while. Yes, Rodman was coming off of recent championship success in Chicago, but he was also remembered for being a locker room headache in his latter years in Detroit and in his 2 seasons in San Antonio. He was also clearly on the decline, as he started in less than half of the Bulls' playoff games in 1998 and didn't start in a single game of the NBA Finals. Not only was he a risk from a chemistry standpoint, but even the upside was now limited due to his quickly increasing age. But alas, one team was desperate enough to make the call: the Los Angeles Lakers. Although the Lakers were certainly one of the most talented teams in the league at the time, to describe them as a work in progress would be an understatement. They had been swept and gentlemen swept out of the last 2 postseasons, and were annually failing to live up to their high expectations. They were a group of dysfunctional egos. Their leader was best described as a giant entitled child, who was as sensitive and demanding as he was playful. Their 20-year-old phenom was anxious to assert himself, and his selfish and showboating approach to the game had often alienated his teammates, causing them to resent him. Their head coach, Kurt Rambis, was a rookie at the position, and he had just replaced the fired Del Harris after 12 games played in the new season. Rambis had no experience as a head coach, and although he was immersed in the players' egos, managing them would be a near impossible task, because he was just starting to get his feet wet with the playbook, let alone the players. On top of all of that, they were now adding the league's most notorious locker room wildcard. And get this, the Lakers were bringing him in with the intention of him being a leader and teaching this team how to win. Yeah, the guy who took Vegas vacations mid-season on the Bulls was now being leaned upon to lead in LA. Many began to question if the Great Western Forum was now becoming a purple and gold circus. To say that the team was split on the acquisition would be an understatement. The Lakers owner, Jerry Buss, was elated to get it done, while their general manager, Jerry West, wasn't thrilled in the slightest. Shaquille O'Neal was thrilled with the move, but the Lakers starting point guard, Derek Harper, said that he thought it was yet another distraction for the team. They say that first impressions are important, and if that's the case, then there's a lot to take away from Rodman's.
After plenty of public speculation, Dennis officially announced he was joining the Lakers in a Planet Hollywood casino. Or at least, that's what every reporter in the building expected. He showed up 40 minutes late to his own event alongside of his wife, Carmen Electra. He appeared intoxicated, talked about the great intimacy he was having with his wife, and said that he wanted to play with the Lakers and wanted to play basketball again, as if nothing was agreed upon with the organization. He then told the group of reporters that he only called for a meeting to see if they would show up, and they did. Then a frustrated reporter told Rodman that he was selfish and that he had wasted their time. And then Rodman proceeded to cry and rant about how he's misunderstood. So the reporters never got an official announcement from Dennis. But 2 days later, the world would now know from the media that he had officially become a Los Angeles Laker. The city of Los Angeles had championship expectations for the last several years, and seeing how they hadn't won a title since the Showtime era in the late 80s, they were basically starving at this point. Now, after adding a player who had been a part of the last 3 NBA championship teams, the crowds were electric, as Rodman was rewarded with a standing ovation for basically every play he did right.
Set to 24, he comes in deep, throws up an 8-footer, no, rebound is off, Rodman wants it, Rodman taps the ball to Shaq and he scores. Rodman on a double tip, got the ball to Shaq. No other player on the Laker team could have made that rebound.
He is so good at just tapping the basketball.
Nobody good the drive, stop, 20-foot jumper on the way short, rebound is off, he's grabbed by Rodman, underneath to Shaq, good feed, Shaq scores. Rodman's second rebound. Look at the people standing, shaking their fists, shaking the building.
A simple rebound, and he gets a standing ovation. That one, the ball bounced right to him, but it didn't matter.
Even his teammates were starting to feel the buzz, as the Lakers were not only clicking with their new addition, but they were winning. They defeated the Clippers in his debut game, and then they comfortably beat Hakeem Olajuwon and the Houston Rockets, with Michael Jordan spectating in the crowd, looking like a proud father. After they won their first 2 games with Rodman in the lineup, Dennis took some time to talk about his leadership with Ahmad Rashad, and even managed to forget his own wife's name for a moment.
Here with Dennis right now. Dennis, there's so much hype, so much hoopla with you coming on this team about you being the answer. You guys should now go straight to the championship. Do you feel any pressure with all that on your shoulders?
I think the last time I felt pressure when I got married. Everyone in this world knows what I can do and what I can bring to a team. I bring excitement, I bring a lot of hustle, enthusiasm, and this team needs something right now. They need a little leadership, and I thought I'd never say that. But, I'm on a different team with good young guys.
Yeah, but you do lead in your own way.
Yeah.
But you have played on some great basketball teams. As you look around you on this team, does this team have the potential of winning NBA championships?
Well, these guys can keep focused, stay focused every day, and go out there and do what it takes to win. No matter who scores the point, no matter who's the hero that day, just go out there and work together as a team.
And you will be the leader in that area.
Well, I go out there and do what I do. I go out there and play the biggest guys, the toughest guys. And they see me go out there doing it every day in and day out. I hope it rubs off.
All right, Dennis, good to see you, man. Good luck to you.
I want to say hello to my wife, Tara Patrick. I hope that you're
Los Angeles continued their dominating run and started the Worm era with a 10-game winning streak, after starting the season with a 6-6 record without him. Over that stretch, Rodman was averaging 10.3 rebounds per game and only 25 minutes of action per night. He got as many as 20 rebounds in a victory over the Clippers. At this point, even Jerry West had changed his tune, as he referred to Rodman as a basketball genius in an interview. You would think, with this much success, that it would be all smiles in the Lakers locker room. But unfortunately, that wasn't exactly the case, as Rodman missed several team practices, while other teammates complained about the unequal standards that they were held to. Rodman's gambling and party-heavy lifestyle continued, which resulted in public rumors that he was cheating on his wife. Even Shaq, who was initially in favor of bringing in Rodman, was starting to become frustrated with his questionable practices and decision-making, as he would often take naps during team scrimmages and often smelled repulsive, since he only showered before games rather than after. Things would quickly get even more wild. After the 10th straight win, Rodman had to leave the team for personal reasons, and apparently even the head coach Kurt Rambis didn't know why.
There were rumors that Rodman had unpaid gambling debts. There were rumors that Elektra was now cheating on him. And there were even rumors that they were getting a divorce. Needless to say, it was a distraction for the Lakers, as Dennis missed their next 3 games, and LA went 1-2 in that stretch. When he returned to the lineup, the Lakers would win their next 2 games over Orlando and Dallas, which meant their winning streak was extended to 12 games when Rodman was in the lineup. As a reward for his play, Rodman was moved to the starting lineup for the first time. But although his minutes may have increased significantly, his level of focus seemed to decrease. The off-the-court drama was starting to affect Rodman's performance, as he was lacking his usual effort defensively, while getting into an excessive amount of on-the-court altercations. He was also now missing every other team practice, as he was less reliable than ever before. All of these headaches may have been tolerable if the Rodman era maintained its dominant start. But after the 12 straight victories, Rodman and the Lakers proceeded to go 6-6, which is the same record they had before he had signed. On April 13th, in a matchup against the Portland Trail Blazers, Dick Stockton and Hubie Brown perfectly summed up what the Rodman experiment had amounted to.
A late report on Dennis Rodman is that he has a sore left elbow and will not play in the second half. And Hubie, everyone talks about how he could be the missing link in the puzzle for the Lakers. I think at this point you'd have to say that his signing has been a detriment to this team, because with all of the problems that he has brought upon this team, missing practice, going off on his own, all of the things, we don't have time to enumerate it. He really hasn't done the job they wanted, the offensive rebounding, as much as he has.
Just think out here. There are 9 power forwards in the West who have played in the Western All-Star game. Now think about that. So he has been dominating now in the last 10 days by Karl Malone, by Weber, by Baker at Seattle, and then by Grant here this evening. Now he is getting destroyed at his strong suit, defense. He cannot control these guys, and he's being out-rebounded. So, he can pout and do all that he wants, but there are no suspensions. So who are you and I? Because they play him and start him the very next game.
In the very next team practice after these comments, Rodman would show up without his shoes or socks, claiming that he didn't know where they were. And that was the last straw for the organization. Rodman was immediately released from the team. In his 23 games in Los Angeles, he averaged 2 points, 11.2 rebounds, and had a total of 11 technical fouls. Although many of the Lakers on that roster were relieved to see him go, one of the guys who didn't want him to leave was actually Kobe Bryant.
Kurt was put in a very tough situation. One, because he was the head coach for the Los Angeles Lakers, first head coaching job, and then you bring in Dennis. Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. I would love to have Dennis right now. I would love to. Win cures everything. If we don't drop these last 2 games, he's still here.
Now, the 1999 Lakers wouldn't really improve after they released Dennis Rodman. They would finish out the year with 9 wins and 9 losses, including a playoff sweep at the hands of the eventual champions San Antonio Spurs. But during the offseason, the Lakers would hire Phil Jackson to be their new head coach, which would be the dawn of a new and very successful era. According to Rodman, after the Lakers had hired Jackson, he was waiting anxiously by his phone, waiting for a call from the Lakers, since him and Jackson had previously had championship success together. But that call would never come. To me, this is one of the more fascinating and interesting what-ifs in NBA history. Because if you ask me, without question, the 1999 Lakers had a much higher ceiling with Rodman in the lineup. But that team was also like a group of sheep without a shepherd. They desperately needed the calm and composed leadership that Phil Jackson would provide 1 year later, which in Rodman's case was 1 year too late. If Jackson didn't take a 1-year hiatus after his departure from the Bulls and was available for the Lakers to manage the egos, the chemistry, and the drama, then I can only imagine how much more success the Lakers would have had with Dennis Rodman in 1999. Unfortunately, we'll never know for sure.
In the end, who would have thought Carmen Electra would have gotten more out of her marriage to the Worm than did the Lakers?
this rest stuff just drives me crazy. You're playing basketball for a living, okay? I understand if you're working in a coal mine that you may need a rest day after it. You're playing basketball. The joy that comes with competing in basketball is fun to play. I never got tired in a game. How can you get tired in a game? You're playing basketball. I don't understand this. Honestly, I start thinking I must have missed out on something. The 9 to 5 the guy's doing before he comes to the game. He must be putting in some serious work, in the mine or doing something. Maybe he's a logger. Maybe he's chopping wood. You got all day to sit on your rear end. This rest stuff drives me nuts.
The 1985 to 1986 Boston Celtics won the NBA championship. And with Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, and Bill Walton off the bench, they were widely recognized as one of the select few greatest basketball teams of all time. The Celtics brought their core group back for the 86 to 87 season, and they were ready to defend their title. The player who was arguably more ready than anyone else was their second scoring option, Kevin McHale. This 6'10 power forward is widely regarded as one of the greatest power forwards in the history of the league, and to his teammates, he was often referred to as the torture chamber, as he would punish opponents in the low post, with his tremendous footwork, with his solid fundamentals, and with his extremely high release point on his jump shot. He's an NBA Hall of Famer, he won 3 championships with the Celtics, and he earned 6 All-Defense Team selections. The thing is, in this 1987 title defense, what he didn't know is that he was coming up upon one of the most significant nights of his basketball career, which was March 27, 1987. Heading into that regular season matchup against the Chicago Bulls, McHale was averaging a ridiculous 26.4 points, 9.9 rebounds, and 2.3 blocks, on an absurd 61% shooting from the field. In the history of the NBA, there have only been 3 players to average at least 25 points per game while also shooting north of 60% from the field, and Kevin McHale is one of those 3 players. But in this regular season contest against the Bulls, Kevin McHale tragically broke the navicular bone in his right foot. Not only is this injury extremely painful, but especially as a big man, it was extremely dangerous and threatening to his career. Kevin's doctor told him that he should shut it down for the remainder of the season, but McHale ignored the doctor's advice, and he had warned him that his career and his overall health was at risk if he continued to play this season on his broken foot. McHale only missed 3 games due to the injury. Even his superstar teammate Larry Bird publicly said in an interview that Kevin McHale shouldn't be playing for the rest of the season. Listen, if Larry Bird, of all people, who is one of the toughest players in the history of the game, is telling you that you're pushing yourself too hard and should probably sit out, then I have zero doubt that he's absolutely correct. Regardless, he continued to play, and in McHale's first game back against the Detroit Pistons, he scored 25 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 blocks, on 50% shooting from the field, and his Celtics won by 4 points. The very next game, he scored 29 points and had 6 rebounds in a 2-point loss to the Philadelphia 76ers. For the rest of the regular season, which was a total of 6 games, McHale averaged a ridiculous 43.7 minutes per game, which would be a ton for just any regular player. But for a guy on a broken foot is completely unheard of. What's crazy is that it doesn't stop there. McHale played through the remainder of the NBA playoffs, and his Boston Celtics made it all the way to the NBA Finals, where they met up with their rivals, the Los Angeles Lakers. Along the way, Kevin played pretty well, and notably, in a crucial third game against the Milwaukee Bucks, he scored 34 points, 11 rebounds, and 4 blocked shots, while making 60% of his shots. Throughout the East playoffs, he averaged 21 points, 9 rebounds, and 1.6 blocks, on 58.3% shooting. What ensued in the NBA Finals was another epic battle between 2 rivals, and McHale did his usual thing despite the pain, as he averaged 20.5 points, 9 rebounds, 2 assists, and 1 block, while making 58.5% of his shots, in what was one of the most heroic basketball performances in NBA history. Unfortunately for him, it was all in vain, as the Lakers won the NBA championship and eliminated the Celtics in 6 games. Now here's the thing. Because McHale played through the playoffs and didn't shut down his season earlier when the injury first took place, it dramatically affected his basketball career, as he was never the same after this point. His numbers reduced and he just didn't move around as well as he used to. The doctor was right, it did affect his career in the long term. Even Kevin Garnett, who is a Boston Celtics legend and who won the championship with them in 2008, has made some comments about Kevin McHale. And he said that he's noticed how McHale isn't even walking normally for a guy at his age, due to the fact that he played through this injury. So this makes me wonder, at what point is an NBA superstar going too far? I understand there's a lot of old school basketball fans who watch my videos, and you guys are like me, who cherish guys who always go out there and put their best efforts on the court, whether they're healthy or they're injured. A guy who's able to play through injury and help his team win basketball games is displaying his courage, he's displaying his toughness, and he's displaying tremendous perseverance. But at what point is it no longer those characteristics, and instead it looks more like recklessness, or even selfishness, because now you're jeopardizing your entire career and your day-to-day life, which your family certainly cares about. This story about Kevin McHale and his insane toughness has always been a bittersweet story, because on one hand, I feel like he's a hero for it, but on the other hand, it was one of the most reckless moves in basketball history, and he suffered the consequences for it. So with all that being said, please let me know in the comment section below, do you think there is such a thing as an NBA athlete going too far? And where do you draw that line? I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comment section below. Thanks for watching as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.